All right. There's always a good sign when your stream starts with a sound like. Okay, so I'm gonna test the audio, make sure it's working properly because YouTube still has this bad system. Okay. All right, cool. So that works. Nice. I think everything should be working. And let me make sure that the desktop audio is clear. Say something.
Hello.
Cool. Yeah, everybody's
Hello.
clear. All right. So,
Hi.
this is the next episode of Real Libertarians on Jeremiah Talks. We're going to be talking about the general subject of corruption and problems in the Libertarian Party, what they got wrong before the takeover, what they got right and wrong after it, things like that. What led to it, and what they've been doing that's either productive or counterproductive afterward. And needless to say, anybody who follows this channel knows I'm the non-voting anarchist asshole, right? But at the same time, I still think the Libertarian Party is a huge cultural driver, and anyone who knows me knows that, I think politics is downstream from culture, and if we're not willing to talk about that subject, we're going to lose the culture. So, um, like, I don't need to necessarily participate in the party, even though there are some people who want me to. But I definitely will at least participate in the discussion of it. Just to preface this, because some people get their cock in a wad about the fact that I talk about the Libertarian Party and I'm an anarchist, whether they're an anarchist who's, too principled 5U. So they think that any discussion about this is worthless inherently, despite the fact that basically all anarchists historically have talked about, partisan politics versus not. Or they're like one of the people who says, well, you're not involved, so you shouldn't say anything, despite my record of actually having been involved in canvassing and, telling people to join the LP and, passing out the Nolan chart and all this fucking campaigning for Ron Paul, all that sort of thing. So, I put my boots in the mud. I still got the mud stuck to my boots, and I occasionally pick a piece off of it for y'all's entertainment. And in that spirit, of picking off mud, let us start to fling it. The three people I have with me today are Bryce Thon, Rose L, and Kareem. We've been on the same panel before. There might be two other people, or potentially more, becoming involved in this a little bit later. I sent it to a bunch of folks. We'll see if they want to get involved. But in the meantime, why don't we start with, for anyone who doesn't know y'all, what y'all involvement in the Libertarian Party is? Let's start with Bryce, I guess.
So,
Oh, go. Or you.
yeah,
Hey,
go, Bryce. Wait, you want me to go?
and anything
Okay.
fine.
Figured we'd go clockwise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm Rose. I have been a libertarian small libertarian for a long time. I had to keep specifying that I was a small libertarian because I considered the party to be such an embarrassment for so many years. So 2020 happened and the COVID lockdowns happened and the Libertarian Party failed to take, a principled stance. And I'm like, okay, this can't stand. So I'm going to get involved. So that's when I became involved in the New York Libertarian Party. And I'm currently a member of state committee and also the platform committee, and possibly might become involved in other things. That's still to be determined.
Very cool.
I guess I'll go next. Bryce, I've been a variation of anarchist, I guess, basically my entire political life. So since around high school, more or less, I joined the Libertarian Party in 2021 and pretty much immediately decided to throw my name in the hat for state assembly in my area. Ultimately didn't get on the ballot, but I came within 18 signatures of doing so. At the immediate moment, I am on the LP Wisconsin Executive Committee, Constitution Bylaws Committee, and I'm planning on being a delegate for national. We'll see if I get it.
Cool.
Okay.
You?
So I joined the LPMC right after 2020 when I found Joe Jorgen's messaging was not very, in my opinion, effective because she did not say anything about the lockdowns. Didn't have anything to do with her tweets. I just said, like, she could have had a very hardcore stance on lockdowns. Just do whatever you want, you know. And I saw Dave Smith was taking a better position. So I went, met Dave Smith, met Michael Heiss, you know, and stuff, and said, okay, well, you know, I always wanted the Libertarian Party with, even though I like Gary Johnson and JoJo, I've met them personally, I wanted like the Ron Paul type messaging. I like radical messaging, maybe even more so than Ron Paul, and I joined up there. Was a state organizer for a while, meaning I call people on my phone, talk to them for a minute. I'm still part of the party. I'm a delegate for national, so you'll see Rose there. In addition to that, I have the site Anarch Unity, you know, that me and Jeremy are working on. And I think before the takeover was actually really, really good. Messaging was good. The temperature was good. We're putting out good media. Dave Smith was putting out good messaging. Michael Heiss was doing a great job. You know, I still think he's doing pretty good. I think after the takeover, though, maybe we could say there was some issues. Now, we did some awesome things. We had protests, Rage Against the War Machine. We had a lot of good messaging and events. We had the tour. And in my opinion, we're still doing good with a lot of different things. Where we messed up is Dave did not run, so that Scott Horton wasn't very happy about that. We lost someone who was pretty well educated on foreign policy. Then I started seeing a lot of people advocate for Malay. Now, there's a couple issues with that. A, even if he was the most amazing dude, he's in Argentina. So I would put minimal effort into something that's happening, like supporting something that's happening abroad. Now, I know people say I'm contradictory for that. Well, Kareem, you like the Zapatistas. That's because I'm trying to understand their organizational structure. It's not because maybe I'll go check it out in Mexico because I like to travel, but it's not that I'm like, okay, you know, well, we need to exactly love the Zapatistas or love anarchy or something. And they're also not politicians. That's an organizational structure. So just loving a certain thing, or like, I get it, the tweet for Navalny wasn't great, but I'll give a little bit of issue there because I'm not familiar with Navalny's positions and stuff, but that wasn't a good look.
Well,
with the Russian party.
The fun thing about the Navalny sitch is that he did exactly what Assange did, basically. He criticized a foreign leader using things that were uncovered about that foreign leader, and basically his chief position was, like, he wasn't perfect by any means, right? He wasn't an anarchist either. But, like, the deal with him is that he was basically, like, exposing Putin to be chief oligarch over a series of oligarchs instead of a communist man of the people, instead of, like, part of the rich tradition of hawking up phlegm on a live stream, the rich tradition of, like, you know, fucking like Comrade and fucking, you know, we're gonna fucking take down the capitalists and we're gonna take down the industrialists and we're gonna power to the people, dictatorship of the proletariat. He proved, in fact, that Putin had a golden palace in the middle of fucking, like, the mountains, and, like, maybe this guy who's not only an oligarch but also empowering a series of oligarchs, because if you give people property that you can then control them with, then you can control the reins of society. Like, that's what he proved, and that's why they had him axed. They already tried to poison him once, and then they killed him in prison this time.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan. And the problem I see is actually twofold, which is this. The LPMC is like, I love Malay, and I'm like, IMF, this, that. I don't know how you guys feel, and we can talk about this because I get conflicting reports. Alberto Fernandez apparently put in for, I guess it was the purchasing of about 800 million in pesos, 950 in US dollars for hormones to alter how people perceive your gender. So there's that. We can talk about that. But everybody, it's like Malay, and everybody like, will run cover for Malay, and that gets. But also, I'm not going to run cover for Putin or anybody else. So running cover for anybody, in my opinion, who's a statist is not good. Now, if somebody's a libertarian, okay, like Rick Falvina, like Maxime Bernier, like maybe some, specific politicians who are extremely freedom oriented, and you do your homework and you find they're better, okay. So that's a major issue. And then the other major issue is getting into the culture war, the woke politics. To me, that does not really do, and that doesn't help anyone. I think we've proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, half of these woke, anti-woke people are really, in my opinion, conservative imperialists in disguise. They're like, help the children, think of the children. Oh, we're bombing another country, let's get them. So they're like the pro-life George Bush people. So in my opinion,
there's an interesting video that really, I think, smacks that up quite a bit. I'm not going to get too much into that because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But like that particular issue, I watched this video literally today. And this video literally today was about the fucking Sound of Freedom movie. And like basically it's called The Sound of Freedom in the Shape of Modern Propaganda. I'll pull the channel up and fucking give proper citations shortly. But basically, it really highlighted how that movie was used as a way to push a bunch of concerted and connected conservative propaganda, and how it was like directly aligned against the interests of actually solving the problems that create like child sex trafficking. And like how so many of these like anti-woke people, like they promoted this thing, and then this guy, his solution basically is border control, vote for Republicans, because acting like most of this happens just overseas and it's brown people doing brown people things is a lot easier than saying, hey, actually the vast majority of sex trafficking happens in the foster care system and is in fact like a domestic problem, and that's why, it's, oh, I don't know, American kids getting, abducted in America and not just like foreign kids and a foreign problem doing foreign kid shit. And it's not like, you can just go be a fucking disaster tourist somewhere in the middle of brown people country and say, oh, I came back and saved them. Praise me and kneel at my feet and vote for my politicians, or you're a bad person. No, you can't, because you're in fact not addressing anything, and you're just looking for hero worship to satisfy your main character syndrome without any fucking risk. It sucks whole. It really does.
Oh.
Yeah.
There is so much misinformation about how the whole trafficking thing works. Like you'll see these stories shared around about like some middle class woman who claimed she was almost abducted at IKEA while she was there with her kids or some bullshit. It's like, that's not how trafficking works. You're just painting an unrealistic picture of
Yeah, it gets well. So what should we do for the LPMC? I think the best strategy is right now find a good principal candidate to run. If it is Rexenwald, fine. If it's Lars, fine. If it's Chase Oliver, fine. I don't have a problem with Chase Oliver like everybody does. I don't know why they do.
He's got some flaws.
That's one thing. In Austrian economics, like.
That's why I joined. That's why I joined in the first place, because there was this faction of the party that was finally focused on things like imperialism and, sound money and anti-central banking. They said originally they weren't going to get involved in the culture war. They weren't going to take, decisive stances on things like the borders or abortion and other wedge issues. So, yeah, shit that we're all sick of debating.
That was the whole reason they got rid of the abortion plan to begin with. At least that's what they claimed, was because you're taking a specific position on this subject that's actually a little bit murkier than just what's at face value. So,
I mean, it was a nothing statement plank, so I don't particularly care. I mean, okay, there is only one position that's compatible, but I don't want to turn this into a debate over it. But yeah, it was a nothing statement, so I don't particularly care if it's gone or not. If someone wants to restore it and make it compatible with libertarian principles, I'd probably vote yes on it.
Yeah. So essentially, here's what I suggest: is that, you know, I'm not saying he's the, be fair to Jeremiah, I'm not saying he's the best thinker, but the best ideas I have got personally are from Keith. So we need to take who has read Keith books, who's read his ideas, and get them into leadership in the LPMC, focus specifically on Austrian economics, anti-imperialism, and decentralization, and like, if we can win some local races. I get it. It's not super exciting to run for libertarian dog catcher, but it makes a difference because people in your community know you at a local city council or at a school board. And yeah, you can make some change. And if you make some change there and you stop, like, the school board here is horrible. They try and spend like millions of dollars on stuff they don't. Actually, the local government here is just as bad as the federal. They just don't have as much reach. It proves to me that, like, you know, you can get anybody like, hey, here's, even myself, here's $100 million or $10 million, spend it on whatever you want, but be responsible. You know, I wouldn't be responsible. I'm like, woo, you know, sports cars, woo, let's go on vacation. I do dumb stuff. And, you know, they're going to do it too. So winning local races is something we can also focus on. And then last but not least, I'd love if they made some kind of position, some kind of like ambassador, or somebody who can reach out to other organizations. I don't know how you all feel about this, but I think the LPMC would be more effective if we reach out with bigger I'm not advocating for a state, but if we reach out for bigger organizations and then work with them on stuff. Who am I thinking of? C4SS. I like a lot of their pieces. I've met one, she, I think it's male to female, Cynthia went, and I've talked to her about it, and she really likes a lot. She shares a lot of C4SS articles, so I think C4SS is someone we should work with. I'm not saying bring C4SS people into LPMC, but let's work with them. We can also work with a lot of good organizations, in my opinion, as well, such as the Free Thought Project. We could get more involved with AgNex, and even organizations on the left that are promoting decentralization.
Those were some really great plugs for AgNexus and yeah, Free Thought
C4SS is pretty based, actually.
Oh, I love C4SS. Yeah.
And the problem is, if we do all this, like, here's my problem. If we make all these dumb woke, you know, oh my God, like, I'll give you an example. The I don't care about Planet Fitness. It's not that great. You have a membership there, but who cares?
Yeah.
I'm not
care what their policy is, okay? Don't have a membership with them if you don't like their policy.
Yeah. Well,
and that's been their policy for as long as I can remember. I used to have a membership with them because there's one, like, you know, like 10 minutes down the street from my house. And because they were open like 24 hours a day, so it was convenient for me because I used to put off working out until 10 p.m. sometimes. And I mean, they had everything I needed. So I know they're not really a serious gym, but they were convenient enough. And that was their policy back then, too. I remember a couple people complaining about it, but it wasn't heavily publicized. Now, all of a sudden, it's a news story.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that I think is that, like, yeah, if you don't like something, but even whenever Planet Fitness does or doesn't do, unless it's something that's really, really important, like, then I don't think it's worth talking about. And also, I think, you know, we're arguing over things that should be clear. That I'll make one last complaint is that I think it's quite clear to me, if you believe in natural rights, like, you're like, okay, the right to own a gun is natural. It comes from God, Yeshua, your creator, the universe. We can have the whole theological debate, which me and Jeremy did one time. Then if you're I don't look at like, oh, an illegal immigrant. Okay, I look as I'm a human being. I need to defend myself. There's bad stuff out there. I want a firearm. It doesn't matter if even if I have a house, I should have a firearm. That should be quite thing. And borders are a status concept. To me, the only borders are private property borders. So we should get that down. And the other thing I think we would stop doing is even advocating for like any foreign, anyone in power, unless we are saying like, hey, what this person did here works pretty good, or what this country did here is pretty good. Kind of like how Michael Moore does it, where to invade next. He's like, okay, Portugal did good with the drug war. I like Saudi Arabia's tax policy, but their foreign policy. But I like Switzerland's foreign policy. All right, I want to try that. Oh, I like their gun policy too. We should help the population acquire firearms if they want it. That could work. So I think there's some things. I don't know why we're debating it that hard. I know Dave. We should put troops on the border, which I'm like, man,
God, why? I generally do respect him. Like he's one of the few podcasts I actually listen to because I generally do like his takes, but he's had some questionable ones lately, in my opinion, and that's one of them.
Yeah, no, I'm not here to I like Dave Smith, by the way. I'm Dave Smith. I'm friends with Jack Lloyd as well. I met, a lot of these people, but that's what I think we should do. I think we need a heavy emphasis on people like Dr. Leeson, Bob Murphy, David Friedman, and that will get us back on track. And then to work with other anarchist organizations. Like one just followed me today. I've just been talking to them, and they're called Cooperation Tulsa, if anybody knows them. I don't know if they call themselves anarchist social ecologist group in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They plant seeds and they nurture stuff and they do things like that. But like I looked at who's all involved in there, and there's a lot of like really like based I guess you would call them leftists or ancoms. And if we work together, if we put the emphasis on social cooperation, like Mises said, even though he's not an anarchist, we can do well. So that's my long critique of what we can do in the LPMC. And definitely and there's some people who we disagree on. Like, I take the position of somebody is less worse, not ideal. I think I'm still going to go to Washington and vote for Angela and Todd Hagopian. So that might be some people. I think they've been all right, and I don't know who I'd put for vice chair stuff. I like Karen Ann Harlow, so I'm vote for her.
Oh yeah, I love Karen Ann Harlow. Yeah, I think she's based. I mean, I'll probably vote for the current leadership because look what they inherited. I think they've done the best job they can with what they were given.
Yeah, that's one thing too. You got to realize, like, there's corruption. I get, but you're gonna have corruption. This is the issue I have. People are like, well, I took a look at your autonomous zone, or I took a look at the LPMC, or I took a look at like whatever it is. I see there's a little bit of corruption. I'm like, they're still humans, but like, how the corruption compared to what? I mean, granted, yeah, there's some things I really don't like that they've done.
William has a good point in chat here. He says, focus on philosophy. Ideas precede change, and lesser evils are for statists, bro. And he says that in direct response to the idea that we need to go with the less bad thing. Like, I don't think so. And I also specifically don't think they did the best with what they had. They specifically fucked over a lot of what they had, especially Adrian Malagon and the Libertarian Party of California, especially how the Libertarian Party of New York had this thing that I'm sure Rose can elaborate more on, that was recently a thing where Larry Sharp was interim candidate, and he's directly funded by the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and like how that connects to the fact that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was also given free speaking at the Libertarian Party of California's convention, while libertarians had to pay to speak. And all of this coincides to create the environment where libertarians are being squeezed out in favor of statists, and statism is only a natural resort of that mentality. I can't see a way out of that. I can't see a way that, like, promoting statism in the way that they have been, while promoting people like, Javier Milei, downplaying the atrocities that happened to fucking Navalny, like by saying he was just in prison for doing something illegal. No, he wasn't. Like, maybe they didn't make that meme, but they should know what they're saying. They should. And now apparently we know who made the fucking the meme for the account, if it was them who made it, or who posted it if they didn't. And it's the same guy who's trying to
Wait,
alter
wait,
the
wait. Who made
immigration
it?
plank. Well, so that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, he shared that, though. He did not make that particular meme. I'm not talking about the immigration plan, because we can get to that at some point.
Well,
but
let's start with
I view that as
let's start with the Larry
having
Sharp thing.
as failure to properly read the meme. And okay, yeah, sure. Right. I can talk about the New York Libertarian Party. So, yeah, we are not a Mises-controlled party. It's about, I'd say it's probably it was probably a third Mises-controlled at one point. At this point, it's probably closer to a quarter, knowing what I know now and the recent resignations. So we don't have nearly the problem with caucus wars as other state parties, because we've got bigger things to focus on. It's actually nice, because in general, people do get along, but there is a divide between what are called the Larrytarians, derisively called the Larrytarians, and the real libertarians. Larry, of course, referring to Larry Sharp. He's been the for the past 2 election cycles. His main goal has been to get the Libertarian Party back their ballot access, which we had ballot access for 1 election cycle, and then we lost it thanks to our piece of shit governor. He was apparently trying to get back at the, what are they, the Workers' Party, or Family something party. I guess he had some feud with them, so he passed some kind of law that raised our ballot access threshold, so that in order to get ballot access, you have to get 45,000 signatures now. So past 2 election cycles, Larry Sharp's goal has been to get us back our ballot access. He has fallen short the past 2 cycles, but
Really?
there has been a ton of money spent. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this whole fiasco last time where he basically hired freelancers to go around collecting signatures, and then there was this whole thing where scammers signed up, and there was just this whole big thing, and a ton of people were pissed because there was a ton of money spent and we had nothing to show for it. So then enter the Mises type people, who were, our idea is that, okay, fuck ballot access, it does not matter. As nice as it would be to have it back, even if we do meet the 45,000 signature threshold, well, okay, we get it for 1 election cycle, and then, okay, the establishment is just going to they're just going to shift the goalposts. Okay, they're not going to let us play. They're not going to let us be a real party. The voting in New York State is beyond rigged. It's just not worth it. So, anyway, at the most recent New York Libertarian Party convention, so anyway, since we're not a real party, we don't have primaries. What we do is we nominate a stand-in candidate so that we can get to work collecting signatures and trying to get ourselves on the ballot. And then once the national convention happens and a presidential candidate is selected, then we select our stand-in candidate on the understanding that they're going to step down and endorse the actual presidential candidate once that happens. So for months, it's been kind of understood that it was going to be Larry Sharp, because he's popular here, he's a recognized name, and a lot of people in the New York Libertarian Party like him. So about, it was probably maybe 2 weeks before the convention, it was revealed that Larry Sharp had, for RFK's campaign, and getting paid $15,000 a month. So this introduced a serious problem because we're like, is he gonna, like, you know, he's working for a candidate who's not a libertarian. He's directly funded by someone who's going to, like, if he gets on the ballot, he's going to be in direct opposition to the Libertarian Party. And also he's the debate moderator, and they're like, I haven't, you know, I'm not sure how true this is, but there were complaints like at the California convention that he was interrupting other candidates and playing favorites with RFK.
Mm-hmm.
So it introduced a serious conflict of interest, not just, you know, with him as a moderator, but also as the stand-in candidate. So people showed up to the convention in New York thinking, you know, okay, I'm not going to vote for him because he's, you know, clearly being paid by the opposition, and he should not be our stand-in, because there was like, even like, is he even going to like, if he's our candidate, is he going to step down and endorse the person that's selected at national, or is he going to stay on the ballot because he's going to try to keep collecting for a third party, but it won't necessarily be us. It's for, you know, RFK. So in any event, while he was there and he was giving his pitch as our stand-in, he, out of left field, announces that he is going to have Spike Cohen run as his VP candidate. Now, Spike Cohen, you know, everyone knows Spike Cohen. Everyone loves Spike Cohen. So if he were the VP and like people were going around collecting signatures, people would recognize Spike Cohen. They would likely, you know, and sign the petition for ballot access. So all of a sudden, all these people who had been skeptical, all their critical thinking skills seemingly went out the window, and they voted yes on Larry, with the exception of, you know, a certain group of people who had their doubts. Were like, we kind of want to get confirmation from Larry because this is very sudden. Or I'm sorry, confirmation from Spike Cohen that he actually agreed. So somebody from the New York Mises Caucus reached out to Spike Cohen's team. But by the time they heard back, the vote had already happened and Larry was now the stand-in candidate. Then we heard back and apparently Spike had not agreed to it. And we're still waiting for an official statement, but apparently like Larry had said, well, I don't actually need your permission to run you as the VP candidate. And then, I should also mention, one of us asked Larry directly, we're like, did Spike agree to this? And he's like, yeah, he said yes. So then we hear back and Spike had apparently said no. And even if he had been run, because like Larry said, he didn't need his permission, Spike was not happy about it and did not want to be the VP candidate. So in other words, he basically lied. Like he basically blatantly lied to everyone. So a motion was made to, you know, reconsider the vote, but that did not pass. The whole thing was just a huge shit show, and the whole thing was very shady. All I know now is at least 3 people who, you know, were very good members of the party have stepped down over this.
Sounds like the, you know, equivalent of like electoral sandbagging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so
the issue I have also is,
go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say the issue I have is Larry actually has brought some good points forward. Like a lot of libertarians would make a mistake. This is a huge mistake of like, oh, there's Ukraine. Like I don't care. And here's the things, you know, Larry Sharp always said, don't say you don't care, because that makes us look extremely unempathetic. Like it's like, oh, there's a war here. It's like, you don't say you don't care. Say I care, but I have limited capacity to do what I can. And that actually shows that, oh wait, libertarians have some empathy. He made on, like, even Tim Pool, I can give him credit for. He had the idea of you give corporations like a street or something, like Verizon, here's your street, and then potholes appear and then they fix it. So that's a pretty good idea. The issue I have, though, is even though Larry Sharp is well spoken, he's a libertarian in New York, which that's very hard to do. That's an uphill battle among many that, you know, then he sells out. So I don't really like that.
Right. For a while, I really did like him because, I mean, he's very personable, and a lot of us trusted him. Like he had some. I mean, he's not an anarchist, obviously. You know, he's not even sure I'd call him a minarchist, but he had some very good ideas. Like he had this one idea called the caring caboose, like to help resolve all the issue with people, mentally ill people on subways. He had this idea of, taking some of the money meant for, police enforcement and using it to have a social worker on the end car of every single subway so that people who are having, a mental health crisis or something can, they'll have someone to talk to who can help treat them. Like, and among other things, like giving, I don't know, outsourcing naming rights for bridges or selling naming rights or something. Like, he had some ideas that I think could be helpful. And yeah, I mean, he's always been very nice when I've talked to him, so I did like him. So I guess that's why, I was
Betrayed.
People had warned me that he's pretends to be. I guess I was very reluctant to believe them.
Yeah.
That's the issue I have. Larry is a very good speaker, and that's the issue. We have a lot of really good people, even in the libertarian circles or in green circles, who portray themselves. Yeah, I'm here to fight for you on this, and then the moment something happens, they get corrupted as well, which sucks. One thing I will say is the Meacocks in Pennsylvania said, "Oh, what is this?" Apparently, New York also has. I know we're against parties, but New York also has a communist party that's become a little bit relevant. Now, I'm not saying
Which one? Are we talking like the CPUSA or the PSL or what?
I forget what they're called, but I saw their Meacocks saying, "Oh man, there's a
I have a
communist."
feeling it's not CPUSA because CPUSA has been by
It's a joke.
has effectively been spayed and neutered and is a complete non-factor.
Yeah, it seems like all the like serious communists, if they're going to be part of a party, it's the PSL. Don't know a ton about it. That's the one that they all claim they're a member of if they're a party.
Okay, well,
The Working Families Party is what I was thinking of. That was the party that our piece of shit governor was trying to get back at when he fucked with our ballot access. I don't even know what it was because they always, every single time, they just endorse the Democrat. They have the Democrat, their line. But there was some dispute where he was mad at them for some reason. So he passed some order to raise our ballot access threshold. So then we got, caught up in that along with the other third parties. And now none of us are technically real political parties. Like my party designation is other-libertarian.
Other.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you guys could say, okay, we have the libertarian principles, help the communists understand their libertarian principles without having them, pull them out of the statist Marxist mind work, which I think is possible, then you'd have a good regional ally in New York that can help fight against the state, in my opinion, because I don't think anybody truly likes Hochul. I think she's just there. I even said
we hate her.
Bad. Where is the grabby guy? Like, at least he didn't seem evil. He just seemed incompetent. So I'm not saying I'm a Cuomo. This is not a Cuomo endorsement.
Fuck Cuomo. Seriously, fuck Cuomo.
Is he worse than Hochul, though?
Well, okay, they're bad in different ways. Fuck Cuomo.
Okay.
So
Every time I hear Cuomo's name anymore, I think of like the fucking TikTok that was taken on like a New York subway where the entire fucking subway just starts chanting, "Fuck you, Cuomo."
Yeah, I mean, we had to listen to his stupid voice every single day in New York State during COVID to find out what we were allowed to do that day, whether we were allowed to go to work, whether we could get together with our family members, whether we could even, go to the fucking grocery store or something. But what does he do? So he takes people who have tested positive for COVID and he puts them into fucking nursing. Okay, full of the very people who, from the beginning, we knew were most susceptible to COVID, who were most likely to die from it. Hospitals were not overwhelmed, except there were a couple exceptions, I guess, in New York City where everything's overcrowded. Yes, a couple hospitals had issues with overcrowding, but other than that, hospitals were not overwhelmed. It was just this theoretical possibility that all the news anchors were panicking about. They're like, oh my God, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. This did not happen. But because they were afraid of, theoretical hospital overcrowding, they took COVID positive patients and put them into nursing homes full of 90-year-olds who, if they got COVID, there was a very high likelihood they would die. Okay, people working in the healthcare field even said, they're like, okay, if you do this, people are going to die. And they were it was illegal for them to refuse to take the COVID patients. So what happened? A bunch of old people in nursing homes died. And this was all, this was thanks to Cuomo's orders.
Yeah.
This was completely ignored. This was not anywhere on mainstream media until like at least a year later, when all of a sudden this started coming to light. And then all of a sudden he resigned because of allegations of sexual misconduct and all these things that every single politician has done that's normally swept under the rug. But it gave him a convenient excuse to step down without anyone caring. I should also add that, all of a sudden, he just decided one day that pot should be legal when this stuff started getting media attention. And that's why weed is now legal in New York, because the nursing home scandal started coming to light. And he's like, hey, everyone, New York.
So,
yeah, Whitmer in Michigan did the same thing with the nursing home. She didn't get ousted, though, unfortunately. She's still very much there.
Adolf Whitmer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it sucks. One thing I would say... Oh, go ahead.
Go for it.
One thing I would say in relation to that is a lot of the Libertarian Party, aside from Thomas Queter and Larry Sharpin, maybe people just say, like, New York is hopeless. It's going to be Democrat foreseeably till the end of time. There's not much pro-liberty stuff that can be done. It seems to be a problem of big cities. And I think big cities are inherently, the concept of it is inherently stated as well. So that's another issue. But go ahead, Jeremiah. Sorry to cut you off.
So, the general thing I want to say, it's an East and West Coast thing. It's big and small. Because the problem with the Robert F. Kennedy situation, and I'll say more of this when Rose is back on. I think maybe she can hear me. I think I see her in the... Okay, there we go. So, the general vibe...
Sorry about that.
It's fine. This is an I just ate a fucking graham cracker. So, fucking, this is not the most formal stream on the planet.
Anarchy.
Yeah, right? Grammarchy. I wanted a graham cracker. So, the general thing that I want to say is this is a massive problem that sweeps both the East and the West Coast. And the general thing that I think
Midwest,
yeah. Well, the thing is, even in the Midwest, and even, in the more, industrial / farming places, you've got people for instance, this isn't necessarily Midwest, I don't think, but in Iowa, I don't know, is that the Midwest? I don't think so.
Iowa is the Midwest, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, so Iowa's a great example with the motherfucker over there who's the Polk County Libertarian Party chair, running Josh Smith, and at the same time as he's running Josh Smith, trying to court Vivek Ramaswamy. To say maybe you could be our Libertarian Party candidate, despite the fact that he has nothing but middle fingers for libertarians on a routine basis. Despite the fact that he's an anti-libertarian fucking war hawk, but he just wants to go to war with Mexico instead of the Middle East. The fact that he's fucking this big pharma bro, COVID database, fucking, militarize the border. He's with Dave Smith on that. This is a fucking, giant problem in liberty circles where people will just align with conservative positions and conservative politicians who happen to jack them off right. It's the same thing with RFK Jr.
Well,
and the fact is that RFK Jr. got a warmer welcome than any libertarian candidate at the Libertarian Party of California's convention, which is why he got to speak for free and Rechtenwald got interrupted, and that's why one of Rechtenwald's fans was interrupting the entire thing and had to be thrown out. And also because Rechtenwald does the same thing and appeals to right wing politicians and sentiments and has the anti woke grift. The person had to throw in a nice little slur in his departure. Like this is the kind of people we're dealing with. If they're not one flavor of authoritarian right winger, they're another flavor of authoritarian right winger. Because RFK Jr. is an authoritarian right winger. Oh man, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an authoritarian right winger, and he's on the anti woke grift, and he's on the borders grift. He's on the everything is turning kids trans grift. He's on the we need to stop the liberal woke media grift. He's on all of that. He's like
The rabbi
basically
circle jerk grip.
yeah. And saying that COVID was directly engineered to avoid Ashkenazi Jews. Like, fuck you, RFK. Fuck you and your stupid, racist, sexist, anti-LGBT bullshit.
Yeah, they accused him of being
Yeah, that's kinda
anti-Semitic,
crazy.
but definitely. I mean, he's definitely pro-Zionist, so fuck that guy. He had great messaging on things like the Ukraine, Russia conflict, but
Mhm.
they must have something very good on him, or they just are threatening to murder his entire family if he doesn't stand
Well,
with Israel.
And that was one of the fun parts. Speaking of murdering his family, like he fucking says that the CIA is actually good because he has a niece in the CIA, and most of the CIA are good people.
Uh-huh.
And like no, in fact,
God.
it's a fucking archaic institution that consistently invents its own villains to justify its own existence and to expand the interests of the industrial complexes in the United States. You fucking cuck. God, I hate him.
Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Somebody,
No, fuck
somebody-
RFK. Okay, fuck RFK.
somebody needs to kick him in the fucking balls and be like, "You fucking moron!" They
What would
literally
you sound
blew
like
your
after that?
uncle's fucking head off.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm thankfully, most of the Mises caucus agrees with me on that, at least. So that's why the whole thing with California was weird. But okay, when the New York convention was the New York nominating convention was in its early planning stages, there was a lot of debate over whether we should try to invite RFK. And the main justification was, it'll bring media attention and it'll bring, lots of people and it will bring donation money, because that's the problem, like paying for all this shit, just things like venue rentals. Either, you can get big money donors who can pay for these events, or you charge, your members, high admission fees, and then they resent you because, I mean, I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of complaining that I have to spend $200 to show up and vote for, when I'm already a state committee member volunteering my time. So, yeah, there was a lot of appeal there in inviting someone who's going to bring money along with them so that we can afford to continue to do this stuff in the future.
I wonder how much of that money was spent on the gun control checkpoint at the beginning, because what's hilarious about the bringing in somebody for money, I wonder how much of that money was spent on fucking their literal anti-gun checkpoint to make him feel all safe and snug in his bed, so that he could fucking wake up and stammer some more. And I wonder how much of it was also lost with people not giving a fuck anymore because of obvious lack of principle. I wonder if it balanced out the amount of money that he brought when the convention cost a whole lot, looked really fucking bad, and had a whole lot of these fucking security professionals weren't fucking volunteers. It cost money, and it probably cost a shit ton more for not only that, but perimeter security and a bunch of others. This is the kind of result of just principle drain. Is when you start to compromise on principle, you end up with the unprincipled, and those unprincipled people oftentimes have a whole lot of operating inefficiencies that make things worse in the name of protecting their own particular form of mental security. And as we all know, if you choose to sacrifice temporary liberty for some security, then you will get neither. It's there's no fucking trade-off that's worth the principles that the Libertarian Party is supposed to have being sacrificed on the altar of things that are against them.
Yeah,
Right. They
here's
had
my
like
issue with
barricades
that.
in front of the stage and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of the appeal is that these most of the candidates are just regular people. You can go up and talk to them. But yeah, you had to be all formal. Like there was a dress code, and apparently one of the rules was that you could not call RFK by his first name. You had to address him as Mr. Kennedy.
Yep.
Okay, that's weird. Here's a good thing though, and I'll say this. A lot of people I did bring in, which I didn't bring a ton of people, and I brought like 5 or 6 people, and then one of them said, one of them said, who I brought in initially, still friends with, said we should run RFK to get like publicity and stuff. But then after I even said give him a chance, but I'm like no, this guy's bad news. So the good thing is the leadership did listen and say, hey, look. No RFK, because we're going to get an old school Democrat who's just going to say guns are bad, eco-fascism, all that stuff. And then we're going to be like, oh, we're back to Libertarian Party square one, where we're just basically Democrat light with Sarwark, and I don't want to do that. So that's good. At least the leadership is principled enough to say no on RFK. We're going to run someone different. I will say there's a few candidates who are not playing the grift of the culture war, in my opinion, and regrettably, sometimes a lot of the candidates do. I think Lars is okay. I haven't seen Chase Oliver do that either. I still like Michael Rechtenwald in a lot of positions, but even that's a problem sometimes. But I'll go listen to Lars as well and see what Lars has to say.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Lars. I don't know, he's always kind of just faded into the crowd for me. Like, okay, he's never said anything that I disagree with, but I don't know a ton about him. And yet I don't really share the hatred of Chase Oliver. Okay, yeah, he's a minarchist, or that's how he identifies, so he's not an anarchist, and supposedly he holds some positions that are problematic, but I have not personally seen them.
Yeah. People are like, oh, Chase Oliver is a Marxist. I'm like, shut up.
Okay, no,
This is
that's
ridiculous.
just stupid.
People
No, he tried to go after Rechtenwald for having been a former Marxist, and it was actually very satisfying to watch because Hornberger came to Rechtenwald's defense, and he's like, Rechtenwald actually understands what socialism is and knows how to, he knows the arguments, he knows how to fight back against it. Whereas, you just had 3 socialists giving their pitches and you failed to identify and, make proper counter arguments to it.
Yeah, that's why I think Rechtenwald, even though I don't like his, some of his positions still, right? And the other problem is like Mike Termott was. I know people keep saying, well, Kareem, he was a cop and he tried to do it. I'm like, yeah, but that kind of seems like, oh, it's the same problem with Vivek. Oh, he's big farmer, bro, but now he's a good guy. I'm like, yeah. Or like Eric Prince, he's a private mercenary for the private. He's a public private mercenary for the federal government, but now he's a good guy. I'm like, no, I think he's still a bad guy. So that's my
take.
Go.
I'm not sold on Termott in the slightest. Even if his background wasn't what it was, like he was at last year's Libertarian Party Wisconsin convention, and he gave off Gary Johnson vibes. It's like, we don't need another Gary Johnson. There's a reason Gary Johnson didn't work out in the first place.
So 2 things.
Oh,
There are some people who think Gary Johnson was a success because he got, he got the highest number of libertarian votes. But okay, who gives a shit? No one. He did not lasting movement behind him. Like he didn't have any real principles. People just used him as a none of the above option.
Yeah, because they didn't like Hillary or Trump, and understandably so. But it's like, well,
total wasted opportunity.
That achieves nothing.
Well, two things. First off,
gonna...
Mike Termott, I pointed this out on Twitter. He used AI to make his campaign materials, like some of them, and I hate that shit. And not only was this like clearly AI because it was fucking dog shit, but also when I responded to the thing like saying, hey, this is dog shit, I'll make you better like campaign materials, hit me up. He never did, because I don't think he responds to his social media. And this was reified by the fact that I ran 2 polls, and these polls were about 3 candidates a poll, and and an option for other. And I told people, and this is part of my problem, I told people to not only select their chosen candidate, but also to give me a reason why they selected their candidate. Now, the first poll, like let me pull this up so that I can be absolutely sure. But the first poll that I put up had like 3 candidates. 2 of them retweeted it. 2 of them retweeted it, and 1 of them did not. One of them removed himself from the poll.
Yeah, didn't Rechtenwald like untag himself?
Yeah. And so, like, that happened there. And then, like, in the second poll, only 1 of them, like, actually retweeted the poll. So obviously he won that one. And so, like, people aren't even thoroughly involved in their own campaigns. They won't even retweet something that clearly like when the other ones retweeted the thing. Like, I think the 2 people in the original poll who retweeted it were Chase Oliver and Lars. And the one who didn't was Michael Rechtenwald. And in the second poll, it was between Mike Tiermott, Jacob Hornberger, and Josh Smith. And Josh Smith was the only one to retweet it. And shocker of fucking shocker, the people who retweeted the thing did better than the people who didn't. They aren't even invested in their own campaigns. Like, so when Josh got 49%, Mike got 16.3%, Jacob got 7%, and other got 27.6%. Josh beat all 3 primarily because he was the one willing to actually fucking say something. And then, in the first poll, Mike Rechtenwald untagged himself and didn't support the thing. So despite the fact that he had just as much support in the end run, basically, as Lars, you know, fucking, he could have potentially even won this poll if he had retweeted it and played along. He didn't. And even though there
that was lame.
Even though there were a bunch of people supporting him in the replies, and he could have had their backs by saying, yes, I will retweet this poll, I will support the people who are currently supporting me. He probably, whoever's on his social media team, because he has a team, by the way, and this was confirmed by somebody on that team saying, no, we unfollowed, we blocked you because, you know, we thought you were opposition or whatever. We're the moderators of this account. Like, there are more than one person moderating his Twitter account. He's not the person in charge of it, and the people doing his Twitter account aren't him and often act outside of his interests, like saying he's the only anti-state candidate. Like, and then deleting that tweet later on when fucking everybody jumped down their cock about it. So, like, there's a whole lot of problems with this shit. And then you get down to it, and, like, for instance, the first poll for, you know, Rechtenwald, Lars, and Chase. This poll had fucking 620 votes, and it had 126 replies. That means that out of the people who were involved in this poll, only 126 people were willing to say why they made their choice. Or they voted from multiple burner accounts, and that's why they couldn't fill out the numbers. Or something, something, something. So, at the very dead level best, like 3/5.
Okay, for Lars he probably does have burner accounts, because Lars, he has a lot of money, and he's the type of candidate who can afford to fly fly his delegates to DC and put them up, in a nice room for the entire convention.
Well,
So, okay, that's possible, but
all I'm saying,
it's funny because I asked, I'm like, does Reckonable control his account? And I was under the impression he actually did, but maybe not. I guess he does have a team.
Yeah,
I didn't get to ask him directly.
I'll find the tweet, but basically, yeah, it's confirmed he has moderators. But what I was saying that for is,
I actually feel better knowing that, though.
I don't. People should be genuine. If they're not alternative to the mainstream.
I agree, but it means, though, that some of the stupid shit he said may not be him. Because here's the thing, like, I sat next to him at dinner during the convention the entire time and actually had a very good conversation with him. Because I asked him about, like, some of the more controversial topics. I'm like, we talked the trans issue and we talked about the border issue. And he actually had far more nuanced views on this than his Twitter would lead people to believe. So, I don't know, I feel a little better knowing that maybe some of those tweets were not his.
But is he willing to retract them and then speak out against them and then fire the people involved? Because otherwise...
That's a problem, though. That's why you should have control of your own account and not hire people unless you really know them and that they can portray you properly.
It's the same exact problem as you get when Ron Paul had probably Lou Rockwell writing his racist newsletters. And when he also had, like, a significant amount of problems with staffing his own social media, to the point where one of the more prominent examples recently was one of the people working for his social media, like, posting this edited anti-Jew version of a Ben Garrison comic, which wasn't even originally that. The new edited version was all happy merchants, and the original version was all different races of people. And so it was like still semi-racist caricatures, but at least it was all races, not just Jews.
Wait, which one?
I'll find it and post it in the replies to the tweet about this.
I know he posted some. I know Ron Paul's account tweeted something that had these racist characters, but it wasn't it was probably a staffer because I highly doubt Ron Paul knows how to use Twitter.
Yeah, but like that's the problem, is that you should run your accounts, and if you don't, you run the risk of this sort of thing happening, and if this sort of thing happens, it kind of says something about your messaging. Because if the kind of person who'd be attracted to running your campaign is the person who would post an anti-Jew edited Ben Garrison comic, that's a problem. And also, like, the main reason I brought this up is because this is one poll, and the other poll had very similar results. The top two out of the two polls, in case anybody's wondering, are Chase, Josh, and Lars. Sorry, the top three. So those are the top three from all of the polls combined. And then...
I don't think Josh is running, though. At least...
He is.
Maybe he is, but I don't know him well. But, the guy who organized our convention tried multiple times to get in touch with him and never heard back. So I think there might be some bad blood. Like, I'm not getting involved in the drama. I think there might be some bad blood there. But, yeah, I don't know. But I just know that he was really butthurt about it.
Well, what I know is multiple things. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like, the top three were Lars, Chase, and Josh. And then Mike, I think fourth. And he gets mad about being anywhere near fourth place, so I think that's funny. But, the general vibe, there were about, a fifth of the total responses that there should have been. Because my rule was, I want to try something, and obviously I can't force people to do this, especially since I don't know who voted for what. It's anonymous. I said, I want to try something, vote in this poll, but also include a list of reasons why in the replies. If you were to vote for blank or someone else, why would you do that? I want to see compelling reasons, one reason for every vote. And
so why didn't you tell people not to comment? Because then they would have commented.
Yeah, right?
You just asked a bunch of libertarians to do something.
Yeah, well, so... That's the thing, though, is, if they truly want candidate to succeed, they should know enough about them and be passionate enough about them to say why we should be as well. And the fact that they weren't is evidence. All I need evidence that the Libertarian Party is overrun by people who are still doing the NOTA thing. They're still saying that this is my protest vote. I don't actually have a reason. And even of the people who followed the rules, even of the people who actually gave a fuck about their fucking shit, enough to say something, a lot of them were just, I like the guy. He seems like a person. It's just...
You could have a beer with them.
It's just like all
He
of
breathes. He drinks coffee.
Yeah, like, all fucking... it's just standard politician stuff.
I
It's not
enjoyed having
policy.
dinner with Rechtenwald, so...
I want to have a beer with him.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
the thing about
You know what that is, Jeremy? That's
I did have drinks. Him.
Does he? Hey, he's a guy you need to vote for. He sounds like the kind of guy you can have. I remember that with George Bush. People like, why'd you vote for him? He's a kind of guy you can have a beer with. I'm like, oh my God. And now I look back on that. And I'm like, oh, this is the reason I think that like people think, oh well, Americans do, because literally people say, oh, like, oh yeah, Obama's the kind of guy I want to have, or George Bush. And I'm like, man, these people are like psychopaths, and they literally run debt, start wars, and people are just like, well, he's kind of, or like Trump, he says it how he thinks. I'm like, that's kind of scary, actually. That's not great. That's how you get someone who prints a bunch of money during COVID, or someone who does warp speed, or someone who starts a genocide in Yemen. It's just like, yeah, okay, let's sell money to let's sell a bunch of things to the Saudis. I like taking the guns
first and doing due process second.
Yeah, it's like he tells it how it is. Like, oh, okay. They're like, well, no, we didn't mean that. That's okay. And I like people who run cover. Like, there's a dude who says Austrian economics is objectively correct all the time. Objectively correct all the time. Okay. And then I posted something anti-Trump, and he's like, well, I'm like, he enacted tariffs. Aren't tariffs bad? He's like, well, you kind of, once in a while you got to do that. And I'm like, that literally, he's like, use AI, use AI. So I pulled up AI that says Austrians say tariffs are bad, which I don't like tariffs. He's like, well, what would you do? And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
And principled Austrian economist theorist would be like, yeah, tariffs are bad.
Yeah, it's like, but China is cheap steel.
Well, and so
China.
So and then, like, first off, welcome, Lizard. The general thing that I think is the case here, and it could not be the case. It could be the case. I think a lot of these candidates didn't want to support the poll because they didn't want to potentially boost a thread full of a bunch of reasons to vote for the other guy. And I specifically rigged it that way. I specifically rigged these polls to make sure that if people reposted this, they would be reposting a series of reasons why the person that they are opposed to triametrically would be like, bye. Would be like,
No.
a good choice. And I wanted to do that so that they would, hello again, so that they would have like, some sort of like dialogue in the comments. I wanted them to have dialogue about why people should support X, Y, and Z. And like, they apparently didn't want to have dialogue. And that's the other problem, is that, so we've got 4 problems. You don't have principles, and that means that you're willing to sell out to not you, like I'm saying the party as an entity in general doesn't have principles, so they're willing to sell out as soon as they can, as soon as they'll sell your kid into slavery for a bag of coffee that like gives them what they want. Then like
it's Zapatista good coffee, by the way.
Then like they'll also not like be passionate enough about their people to even know why somebody should support them. So no wonder they're willing to sell out so quickly, because they're not even passionate about their people. So might as well throw RFK or Vivek or Millet or any of these other fucking people on the fucking shit. You know, and like when it comes down to it, they don't want to have a discussion. They'll block you on Twitter a lot. They'll create echo chambers. The Mises Caucus will ban you from their group if you criticize Malay. And they'll block you on Twitter because they're scum-sucking little weasels. And
those people are not.
those people are not what? Sorry, the internet.
Like you can't change their minds and stuff.
Sorry, I the internet is cutting out, I think, on maybe my end. Could you repeat that, Lizard?
Look, it's probably my end, but like those people are not worth your time.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I have to kind of shout, I guess, but like they're not worth your time if they're just gonna shut you out and like block you out of their groups.
Yeah.
You need to be working with people that are like open to like criticism and like open to alternative beliefs that like challenge their own.
Yeah.
If people are just gonna jump straight to blocking you, then they're a fucking waste of time. And I agree with you. Like the simping for Malay is like a serious issue, especially in the free market community, because he's like using nationalist measures to fucking implement what they think is a free market, which actually isn't. It's a whole bunch of backwards nonsense, and it needs to be shut down, disproven as much as possible.
Yeah, and like, but that's the thing. That's so those are the to refresh Rose, because she wasn't here when I started to talk about my 4 main issues here that I think are highlighted by this and all the other stuff we discussed today. The primary issue is that they don't stand on principle, so they're willing to sell it out quickly, you know, like a lot of them. The second thing is that they're not real passionate about these people. They can't even describe why you should support them. The third is that they're trying to build echo chambers, and they will literally block you from groups and block you on Twitter and silence and censor and push out if you like criticize them too heavily. And then the fourth thing is they are fueled by the culture and the money that still created the original problems to begin with. Because for everything that they complained about, Coke money and, you know, billionaires and the old guard and blah, 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 they still get it. And they're affiliated and supportive of a bunch of organizations which are directly tied to the same people. Like, so many right-wing organizations are directly tied to the Koch brothers. Some of these organizations are organizations like Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty, fucking Moms for Liberty. Somehow they stop standing for liberty after they start saying for liberty. You know, fucking so many Americans for Prosperity, Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute,
so my
Reason.
rebuttal to all this is like there's a portion of like the populace that are like hopping into like free market or anarchist ideals, but they don't know what they're looking into, and they haven't read any philosophy. They've only ever heard the term ANCAP and seen a few memes out on there in the online community, and they see in that Millet preaching all of what they've already heard through all these memes and stuff. And to them, it's like a real fucking great thing, but he's kind of a false prophet in that manner, because like if you read deeper into free market like ideology and stuff, Millet doesn't actually stand for fucking just about any of it.
Right.
Like he's absolutely using nationalist measures to embolden a police force and subject people to a fucking coercive society. Like he's not sending state representatives around asking people for consent. And if he was trying to implement an actual free market like economy, that's what would be happening.
Right. Well, and
I wanted to like Malay. I really wanted to like him because he was, you know, he's entertaining. He'll do things like stand there with a chainsaw and tell people to shove the state up their ass. But I mean, he would not. If he were actually anti-central bank, he would not have been allowed to win.
Well, you wouldn't hang out with Janet Yellen if you were anti-central bank.
Uh-huh.
You get a loan
Yeah.
from IMF. Someone actually asked me, they said, well, Kareem, the Peronists did a bad job. I said, yes. Here's what you do if you're anti-central bank. You go back to Mises. Hey, imagine that. He's an economist, so he should know. Money means of exchange. Now, I can understand the ANCOM theory as well of exchange economies, like they talk about get rid of all money. But fine, you want price signals in a free market economy, even if you're an anarchist. So to me, my answer is simply this. You find Scotland and Switzerland have proven free had competing currencies. You can read about this that did work. And another example is cryptocurrency. You have a lot of competing currencies that work and don't. To me, you can expand that in the local municipalities and the state by having local currencies that work based on something that has intrinsic value in that region that's backed up. It doesn't have to be by gold. The gold standard just says, hey, it's pegged to something that has actual thing that people see value. Or you could do what Bulky's doing. I'm not saying he's perfect, but have things in Bitcoin. So I don't see any reason for him to do what he's doing. Free market wise, he has also expanded the police state. He did not end the drug war, Patricia Bullrich, and his foreign policy sucks, with Ukraine and Israel and stuff like that. Also want to welcome Lizard Jesus here from Mad Liberty. Go check him out. And he visited a really cool Sikh temple that I want to hear about that experience. But just to get back to the thing, stop simping for Malay. Even I like Rick Falkvenia. I like Maxime Bernier, and I say that, but I don't post tons of their stuff everywhere. I just say, hey, if it comes down to it, not a political position, I'd work with the Swedish Pirate Party. I'd work with Jeff Berwick from Anarchapulco, even though I don't like what he's done in some regards.
But here's the thing, though. So the reason I brought all that up wasn't necessarily specifically to talk about Malay, though that's a good example. But, it's a broader cultural thing. So many of these people also support Pinochet. So many of these people are supportive of Putin right now. So many of these people are actively willing to sell out their principles as soon as one of these people says the thing that they want. And so what I'm saying is that the real core problem is that the Libertarian Party, which should be allegedly the party of principle, does not teach principle. It doesn't start from those grounds. You don't even have to know the platform in order to be a running member. There's no that fucking bitch. The fucking bitches who were like, oh yeah, if you all are open borders, I'm out. And then people like Ace Arcus showed them, in fact, there's a plank for that here. And then these people were like, I'm out. And Angela McArdle was like, please stay. Please. We'll make it closed borders.
As it is right now, the fucking Libertarian Party is
needs to be a test before you can join. You have to know the basic principles, maybe be able to recite the major parts of the plank.
Yeah, and you posted you helped us understand that, because you posted that thing where they were trying to change that plank. And that was an absurd change to the plank.
That was massively unpopular. It was a proposed change that was massivly unpopular. So it got, what was it? I think, 4 11 no's.
I would get kicked out.
Anyone abstain, so, yeah.
The way I see it is Libertarian Party as it is right now is under siege by a bunch of fucking statists and outright fascists.
Yes.
And it's a thinking.
Yes.
I mean, minarchist in the minarchist aspect, sure, I can agree with that.
Even in a full-on status,
it's becoming
faction, fucking Konkin from the start was talking about how it was compromised.
So from the way that I is it's become, because there used to be a thing called the Dallas Accord. I don't know if y'all know about this, but it used to be an agreement between the Libertarian Party and anarchists that we would work together to reduce the state power to like a certain degree to where we could all exist, and then we would split off. Since the Dallas Accord up until now, the Libertarian Party has become increasingly statist, especially towards the right-leaning side.
Mhm.
I mean, it's become to the point where there are fucking like straight up racists and like bigots running around the Libertarian Party, like, and that used to not be the thing, you know. But like,
Well, you know, you just had a bunch of NATO humpers who, you know, the types of people who put fucking Ukraine flags in their profile pics on social media.
Yeah,
So,
correct. We went from
like
that.
we swapped, you know, one form of statist for another. Like, yeah, I mean, okay, yes, there is definitely an issue with rightoids in the party now.
I mean,
you know,
as
I've
it is,
got
like anarchists don't see the Dallas Accord as a valid thing anymore. We
and
have
there's also
revoked our
there's the fucking
consent as a
classic liberal
majority.
caucus who wants to oust anarchists from the party entirely. Like, if they win at the convention, they don't even they nap, for fuck's sake. Like, they want the Libertarian Party to not even be libertarian anymore.
It's
Yeah.
kind of scary to me because there are people like that, and when I posted like, well, the issue I had, yes, was like all the Ukraine flags and all this stuff, you know, it's like Makami, Kami, like even more
Uh-huh.
than it's Kami. I'm like, actually, I get what you're saying. You're against Marxism, fine. But then I made that post, and people were just like, it's a contradiction in terms. Or I brought up like, hey, I get you don't like the USSR, but can you read Conquest for Bread? Like Blizzard recommended to me, and they're like, no, like Kropotkin's this, and that. I'm like, okay, listen, guys, if we're gonna advocate for liberty, we should fight for on all sides. And if you're going to do stuff like this, I don't think this is helpful. And even I have problems with, you know, even some factions. Like there's a bunch of people simping for Malay. Then Daniel McAdams is really good. He's calling out Malay. He's doing a good job. I'm like, Daniel McAdams is pretty good based. Then the attack in Russia happens, if you want to talk about that. And then all of a sudden, like Daniel McAdams, I listened to him with Kyle, and he said, like, yeah, I'm not a Putin fan, but, you know, don't do the CIA's, you know, work for them. Because Malay called for regime change in Cuba. Then we get a bunch of libertarians like, yeah, regime change in Cuba. You're doing the CIA's work for them. Shut up. Shut up. I'm not saying Cuba is the best, but
I'm not very caught up with current events as far as this goes, so this is all new to me.
Yeah. Malay got on and said, he's a son of 1,000 wars or whatever. People from Cuba overthrow this guy. And then I'm like, literally, this is calling for a regime change. This is like CIA top stuff, like Malay. And he's just being a goofball. And to me, but then here's the issue. Here's the issue that happened after that. Then we got Daniel McAdams saying like, yeah, I'm pro Putin. It's badass. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? Yeah, and I'm like, I think what he's saying like, yes. And here's the thing I can understand. Yes, the Western powers are against Putin and they're doing bad stuff. But that does not mean Putin's a good guy. That doesn't mean necessarily Assad's a good guy. It doesn't mean Lula's a good guy or any of these guys. Just because you're opposed by Western powers doesn't mean we go and go pro BRICS.
I'd like to shine light on the fact that nationalists in general, whether they're fucking Western or Eastern or whatever their ideology is, the fucking authoritarians, they like to make people sacrifice their emotions, or their logical thinking for emotions through propaganda. And that's like seen through like in many different directions. It all depends on the country that you're in, really. Like here, you see a lot of anti-communist propaganda in the States, and a lot of anti-anarchist propaganda and shit like that.
Yeah.
A lot of it's left over from the Red Scare that happened during the Cold War between us and Russia, but like it's baked into our laws in some states still. Like in Arkansas, you can't fly an anarchist flag in public. That's illegal. And if you have a gun on you, they'll fucking staple that on you as like a federal charge, and they use the two laws to mix together to like fuck you. It's it's fucking awful. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Start
forgot where I was
flying.
going with that.
Liz, get a red and black flag, and then get some speakers, get a Bluetooth real loud, and then just put in like the Ukrainian anarchist song, Anarchia Mama.
But like,
Last time I flew an anarchist flag in public, I went out to the Capitol out here, and I flew my anarchist flag out on the Capitol, and it was during the Roe v. Wade protests, and Roe v. Wade went through, and like, I went out there in full kit with like a pistol in my plate carrier and shit, and I was open carrying. Here, that's legal. You can do that legally. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't go into the buildings.
So, like, where are you now?
But Arkansas,
Okay.
Arkansas.
and like, I didn't go into any of the buildings. It was a giant fucking protest, and you know, I was honestly like built up like that for my own concern. And not only that, but like the people around me and shit, like there were kids running around, and I don't know why you bring your fucking kids to a protest like that. But like,
I mean, I'm
anyways,
actually cool with
the
that.
fucking cops wound up scooping me up and shit, and like, Kareem, trust me, bro, you would not be cool with that if you were there. Like, they're right wingers, like going fucking crazy and like starting to fucking like be violent and shit.
Okay, no.
And then like the other half of it is like a lot of people invite truly bad people to these protests who shouldn't be around kids. And let me just say, this is a great time to bring up the fact that even the LP Mises caucus has some problems there, which is why during the Rage Against the War Machine protest, it was so fucking hard to get rid of a twice convicted child predator, Scott Ritter, even though he's pro-war.
But we did.
They tried. Okay,
We
they
actually
tried.
did.
They tried, but
We did that.
look,
We didn't try. We did.
Be single-handedly blamed for that. Okay, like
Like,
Well,
I'm actually like, you get mad about my balkanization point, but like that one I don't particularly like show up. B,
oh,
like,
he
that
didn't
was a
even
protest.
show up.
well,
Yeah, Scott Ritter was not there. I was there. Max Blumenthal is not.
he
Has
did-
some bad tastes.
But here's the thing: he didn't show up after there was a huge ruckus, after like a huge amount of people, fucking threw their like
I was
opposition
in the
at
Discord.
that. Right. But here's the thing: the like Daniel
Even
McCad.
posted.
But
You
here's the
posted.
thing. Here's the thing. Daniel
you
Mc.
made a
Here's
huge-
the
you
thing.
still bring this up,
Here's the thing.
and they
Daniel
didn't even show up.
McAdams said that you wouldn't get Ron Paul again if you ousted him. And that means that there's a systemic
Well,
problem.
Ron Paul showed up. He was.
Okay, but that's the thing.
Like,
Like,
I was trying to segue
obfuscating
into a
from the
point where like I was put
obfuscating-
into a jail in Pulaski County where like they had a wing called Anne Frank, and like the cops were definitely Nazis. But that was my end point. Go on.
Yeah.
All cops are Nazis.
But that's the thing. It's like if you take your kid to one of these protests, you're like liable to get him him or her them interfaced with some truly terrible people who weren't properly vetted because people aren't willing to properly vet people. And like that's the thing.
It's not that. It's not that.
I didn't know
It was
there were
that.
violent right wingers before I said
It's
that.
not lack of vetting. It's that, you know, the detractors, they use these smears against literally anyone. They'll call, okay, we've been hearing for months, oh, so-and-so is, you know, pro-Russia. So-and-so is a groomer, blah, blah, blah. Like, by the time they brought up the Scott Ritter thing, like, even I'm like, you know, I saw that and I'm like, oh, just shut the fuck up or more. Well, they were right that time, but yeah.
But
You know,
but they
it's,
were
You
right
know, when
about
it-
when it
multiple
comes to
people
like
there
all
being
the-
pro-war.
Yeah,
When it comes to the
Yeah,
false
and no
false
one believed them at
accusations
that
and
point because
stuff,
we'd been hearing that we were all a bunch of Russian shills for so many months.
this is the issue. Look,
hey, and I wanna make a point. So like when it comes to the false pedo accusations and stuff, I would really look into the people who are making those accusations, especially in the modern day, because it's become so much the case that actual fucking pedophiles and like politicians and such are like scapegoating others as pedos in order to fucking like cover up their own deeds.
But this
Yeah,
is on his
it's
Wikipedia.
it's frequently projection.
This is on his Wikipedia. It's surface level information. Zero digging is required. Basic vetting is all it took.
Look, I believe you about Ritter. I'm just saying, no one was listening at that point.
Okay, but they should have been.
Look, maybe you don't remember, but like this is how we met. It was you posting making a post about the Scott and us getting into this really dumb argument over it.
Oh, okay, yeah, but like that's the thing, is that when I say that they didn't vet him, it's because they didn't, and that is a problem.
They didn't. No, I believe you. I do believe you. I'm just saying, I think people had tuned out by that point.
Okay, but they shouldn't have tuned out at the point of vetting, and that's what should have happened before any of this came up, because it's not a smear to say that that's happening if it indeed is, and people involved in these circles and in these, like, protests need to ensure that the people involved in these protests are actually good for it, rather than being a distracting element, because it's not the people who call them out that are the problem in that case, it's the fact that they were there to begin with to be called out, and that should have been to start with. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because so many of these protests are just like, we need to involve the people who can bring us numbers. It's the same argument as like having Robert F. Kennedy at your convention, right? Not yours, but like, you know, in general, Royal U. The same general vibe yeah, actually, because they were trying to think of bringing him to the New York thing, right? Yeah, like so.
No, but
the point I'm bringing up is that like this is the same argument. Is that maybe if we can get some numbers, maybe if we can like get these people who are already affiliated with the establishment, we can get enough numbers that we can push our message to more people. That's a problem because it's going to be like.
Look, I agree. Yeah. They need to. Okay. In the future, yeah, they need to not have. They need to not have Scott Ritter at anti-war events. Like, look, I do agree with that much because at this point, like, they can't plead ignorance anymore.
Yeah, and like Angela McArdle was directly affiliated with him in 2 more rallies later. So.
No,
my experience, y'all.
She's got a lot.
Hey. I want to make a point. So, like, in my experience, it's definitely not about the fucking numbers. It's about the quality of your members. Like, if you have a person that's able to, like, effectively replace 2 or 3 different just by how they dedicate themselves and they put forth their effort, why have the numbers? Mm-hmm. It's about the quality of the person. Right?
And that's what I was saying, too.
That's what I want to put forth anyways.
And like even if it's not these rallies and protests and political things that involved him, you know, and then like Diane Sare, I don't know, running independent, she had this anti-war rally, and Larry Sharpe and Angela McArdle spoke at that one alongside Scott Ritter as well. And then after that, the Rage Against the War Machine people were part of the sponsors for a LaRouche organization running another anti-war rally, again, allegedly, called Humanity for Peace, that not only involved Scott Ritter, but a bunch of actual Nazis. And, like, this is a repeat problem. It's not just
Diane
once.
Sare was at the New York convention. Like, all I know about the LaRouche people, they have a couple ideas. Like, they're anti-war. They have a couple ideas that are not terrible, and they have a bunch of ideas that are really, really bad. Like, they want a national bank, but they don't want the Fed because they think the Fed is private because, you know, well, it is private, but not really. That
sounds fucking, like, backwards.
Yeah, they are stupidly blue-pilled on a lot of the economic issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Diane Sare was at the New York convention because she's running for Senate, and like we made an agreement with her that like we didn't directly endorse her, but like we also wouldn't run a Libertarian Party candidate for U.S. Senate. But that's on the agreement that like she would help collect ballot signatures for the Libertarian Party and other third parties.
Right. Well, and the reason I'm bringing this up, like, this is a good way to like sort of bring up this issue, because then you get past like Angela, which I know there are mixed opinions of Angela here, and there are some defenders and some people who aren't. I'm in the aren't camp. But like what I'm gonna say is like it's not just her, it's also like Thaddeus Russell running massive like fucking propaganda for libertarian circles, being involved in a lot of them, running a panel involving like major libertarians and major non-libertarians but who are also allegedly anti-war and shit like that, and being involved directly in supporting a bunch of libertarian and anarchist things. And he has Scott Ritter as a like Patreon pledge for his Patreon. Like if you give him more money a month, you get the privilege of listening to a guy who advocates adult child sex in the form of Thaddeus Russell, and a guy who wanted adult child sex in the form of Scott Ritter and was convicted for it twice. And I'm glad those were cops that fucking caught him, because at least they weren't actual kids he could victimize. So it's like the thing is like these people are all part of this gigantic jack-off network that is either intentionally or unintentionally allowing terrible people in. This is one example. I could bring up hundreds of bad actors in these circles, but I think that this one is a good way to sort of establish the tone. He gets speaking arrangements on Jimmy Dore, Sabby Sabs, a bunch of these alternative media like organizations will pick up Scott Ritter to talk about this shit, and then they just won't bring up the fact that he twice tried to meet with and fuck kids. And it's like, just maybe we should try harder here.
I agree.
Unrelated, but like the fucking I don't know if y'all have heard about the Dan Schneider shit.
Yeah.
That has been like kind of swept under the rug a little bit. Dan Schneider was like responsible for a lot of the directing of like Nickelodeon shows in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that guy. Okay, that was
yeah.
Anyone brain cells knew that. I'm like, he
Yeah.
always picks a specific type of teenage girl for his shows. I'm like,
Well,
here,
I'm hoping
there's
been some exposés
this
lately.
is acting. Yeah, there's probably something going on there.
Some exposés. He's been accused of like taking excessive photos of like children's feet.
Yep.
And like the old 2000s Nickelodeon logo was literally a foot. I don't know if y'all remember that, but that was a thing.
Yeah.
He's also being accused of like being very abusive with his like managerial power dynamics with like the child actors and like the women that he worked with and like the studio stuff. Like there's like, I don't know, there's a few different fucking documentaries that I can link the chat to. I was watching one earlier today.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all, honestly.
So I wanted to say, because I was at the protests, I was also protesting Ritter. So I think there is an issue with organizational structures. What did Malatesta say? Anarchy is organization, and more organization. So we do need to be obviously cognizant of bad actors. I will say one good thing is that war protests generally, like as far as I know, the Vietnam War was primarily, if you want to call it the left, or people who were maybe more on that side.
Oh, they were mostly leftists, yeah.
Yeah, they're mostly leftists. Same with the George Bush. Like maybe I don't consider myself either or, but some right-wing folk who were at least what you consider libertarian there. And the good thing I can say is Ron Paul did show up. I think we did a decent job with that. Overall, though, I think we do need to be more careful with libertarian ideas. What I'm trying to do in the party is people still like me for some reason, even though I've told them everything I've read, everything I've looked at recently. They're still listening to me. And everybody knows now. I've made it public. I had phone calls. I said, yes. They said, what do you think about Rechtenwald? I said, I like this, and this. But I've been reading Kropotkin. I'll test like a calm theory for that. That if they're okay with that, which Ben Weir of Shut the Punk Up is. The only one who didn't like it, I could kind of tell, was Clint. But whatever, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
but
not
fuck
surprising.
Clint.
Clint won't talk to me anymore. Me and Clint used to get along, but
Sad.
he's not talking to me anymore, which is fine.
Once
So-
you
Yeah,
start
I
thinking
know.
for
You know, a
yourself,
lot of
people
people
like
don't-
Clint
Like
walk
New York
away.
people, I've been upfront about the fact that like I started out on the left and started out reading ANCOM theory, and then kind of went around the political spectrum, but arrived back at market anarchism. But I mean, they
Well,
haven't disowned me over it.
Are you
A
comrade?
lot of people don't like understand that like all of anarchy is it can coexist with one another as long as we hold voluntarism at the core and decentralization and like the NAP. Like those are three pillars to anarchy, and if you're not within those in your ideology, then you are definitely not an anarchist. You are some form of authoritarian. Like those are definitely three things where it's like if you're not, then you're not an anarchist, you know?
Correct.
And everything else beyond that is just preference. Like me as an ANCOM, I prefer to like live out on a homestead where like we have a donation pile where we donate for like the communal the communal betterment, right? So like our current like communal property looks like computers, TVs, game systems, 3D printers, bikes, guitars, tools, and like things for gardening like seeds and stuff. And we also have chickens, and all that stuff is like communal property. And like we don't expect people to like donate. We expect people, like, if they're going to be living here, to like better the community in some way, right? But like you're still allowed to like build your own wealth and like better yourself as far as you want, as long as you're like helping around here.
So
And
wait,
like
how
that
many
can
people are there?
that can
How many people live in the community?
currently 5.
Okay.
But like help can look like many different things. Like you don't have to have a job here, as long as you're like working in the garden or like just like cleaning around and making the place like look like somebody lives here, tending the chickens. All that is like means enough to like be here or like stay here. Of course, like that would be like under consensus of everybody here whether or not you'd actually be able to be here, but
Right. It's voluntary association.
Well, what
Yeah.
ANCAPs need to understand, and I've talked to them with this, is they say property cannot be public or communal. I'm like, have you ever been to a library? Like, and I was discussing this with my friend Jack, and I said, like, look, if I take one of your books and give it to a library, now people can check it out. As Lizard explained to me, all you essentially do is you take the extension of the concept of a library where you have goods. And I think Kropotkin says things in your immediate usage, like this would be personal. Obviously, I don't think you want to make everything public. Like you don't want
no, and like
wants me to grab his mic and be like, it's public, because he'd be pissed, or his sonics.
yeah.
But if there's something he has, and they like say, you have an abundance of chickens or something like that, then you say I have a surplus of this. Let's utilize that for public property. Or
Well, it's all about like individual consent, right? So like the individual would be like, it's all up to the individual as far as they want to benefit the commune. But like basically the bottom standard is like benefit the commune in some way. It doesn't matter how that is. You decide that. But if you can't figure out how to do that, then you're probably not going to be welcome, right?
Correct. Well, what I was saying essentially, like someone kept pushing the thing. Well, if you live in Rojava, I'm not saying Rojava's ANCOM stand, but they follow Murray Bookchin, which he kind of is in that realm. I don't necessarily want to debate this though, so let's not do that. But okay, Rojava has
No,
more
I'm not trying to
emotion.
debate.
Some people said Rojava is statist or anarchist. I'm not going to debate that, but like my understanding is, in Rojava you can benefit yourself, you can move up. But I'd say at a certain point, if you say my end goal is to be as wealthy materially as possible, why would you go to Rojava in the first place? That's kind of like me saying, well, I want to be a volunteer worker, but I want to be Elon. I want to have more Bitcoin than Michael Saylor. It doesn't make sense. I mean,
Yeah.
so to me, you have to look at incentives. If you want communal help and you want to live a good life in the community, then you go someplace that's Murray Bookchin's ideas, or Kropotkin, or my favorite Malatesta. If you want to, be filthy rich, then yeah, okay, coexist in a Rothbardian type society and try and get as much Bitcoin as you want. And
Well,
funny enough,
I think
believe
that
in both.
I think that these things would be existing alongside one another. So, like, basically, an ANCOM society would look like a very small neighborhood of people just like kind of getting together and benefiting themselves, potentially under one household, or maybe like a whole block of people, you know. But like free market anarchism would be able to exist alongside that, and even like be within like that community and stuff. But like, people really need to realize that with voluntarism at the core, communism and like free market stuff can actually exist to benefit each other. And like they can absolutely exist alongside each other.
Yeah.
And personally, in the communes that I frequent, they tend to hold self-sufficiency above markets. And so it's like anything that they can't produce themselves, right? Through like 3D printers or like growing crops or like anything like that, they'll turn to the market for. And they don't go to a corporation, absolutely not. They tend to build up from individuals. So individual production within the market. Somebody who's like building it themselves. If you can't find it through the individuals, then you turn to like online options like Craigslist or eBay, things like that, where there's still individual sellers, but they're a little bit more widespread.
Yeah.
So it's a different
from there,
incentives, or
from there you turn to like co-ops and things like that. They're a little bit more bigger business, and then from that you turn to corporations as the last resort, because sometimes, unfortunately, in this world, you can't avoid it.
Okay, but I have a question actually that's based on my understanding. If I can elaborate with that, I'm obviously in my post I said I'm not pro Marx. I don't like Karl Marx, except for guns, and other people can debate me on that. But would you say your community, ANCAP communities, would go on the incentive of like profit through competition? Would you say you guys are motivated by the quote which Kropotkin got from Marx, which is each according to his ability, according to his needs?
And then after you answer this, we'll get back to LP's stuff.
Sure. So like, basically how it goes out here is like, according to your ability, like the bare minimum is like, you should be at least like helping to clean around the house, or like community praxis, or like growing stuff out in the yard. Anything beyond that, like, is something that you earn for yourself or that you decide to donate to your community, as like being a member out here. So I don't know if that lines up with what you said exactly, but
I have one more question. Sorry, Jeremiah. Then we can get back to LP. I have a lot of ANCAP friends that they're like, and the Fed, and what's always the chant with Ron Paul, and the Fed, and the Fed. I'm sure we've all chanted that at one point or another. I would imagine even Jeremiah, because he worked Ron Paul thing. But after I learned ANCOM theory, I'm like, no, this isn't wealth redistribution. What we do is we just have mutual aid, meaning I clean, say I was living with you and Mike, and I'd say, I'm not going to use money at all. I'll clean. Mike can tend to chickens, and because I cleaned, I get eggs. And because you did, you took care of the cows, then you give the milk out. Do you think in a community of, let's use the Dunbar number of 150 or lower, it's possible to abolish money and not have shortages? Have you seen that? Did some of these communities abolish money?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Especially in terms of the Zapatistas, they're a great modern example. I don't know how entirely they've actually abolished money. They definitely have not abolished trade. Trade is something that will always exist between people, and even Marx talks about it. And Marx is not an ANCOM, though Marx did birth ANCOM theory. Trade can occur without money. And in terms of Zapatistas, they from what I know, they use like mutually beneficial exchange. So it's very much like free market exchange, where the value is subjective. But like they have received so much support, like throughout their building up, that they've had to decentralize further. So basically, what happened was like they've gained so much support that the Zapatista communal leaders had to come out and be like, turn to your friends and the people around you and form your own communities, right? Because they don't want to like have that authoritarian takeover and control of the masses issue.
So
Thanks for elaborating on that.
Right, that's how I've kind of always assumed it would work. Like you'd have, small communities where things like gift economies or even, simple trade, would work. But then like between communities, you'd still kind of need, you still need, markets of some sort, at least for the foreseeable future, until maybe sometime in the far future we'll have, post scarcity, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
But the thing about ANCOMs is like the ANCOMs that I know, the ANCOMs that I personally like involve myself with, we are not shy of using markets, but it's more of a last resort thing. Like we definitely prefer like self-production and like turning to individuals for help first,
So next question, when are we all moving in? This sounds awesome.
I mean, just look, we're soaked in capitalist America. We are bathed in capitalist America right now, right? So that means that somebody is going to have to have a job to pay the bills and things like that.
Are you near
the best that I can tell,
have medical universities? I can get a job with one of them.
The best that I can tell for you right now, because our commune personally is not open to members right now.
Right.
But start it yourself. Get a plot of land, and just invite people.
That's the general goal up here in Spokane. That's what I plan to get started. Something very similar. I've been talking about it for a while now. So we're gonna
build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And we're gonna get something like that going within the middle.
House.
Yeah, we're gonna get something like that going before the end of the year. That's for sure. And I'm gonna start. One of the things that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start an LLC starting here soon, so that I can start funneling all my labor through that and look really good on tax forms, so that we can afford things like lots and building projects and permits and shit like that. And that'll be how we get the house started, and then we'll get certain people on board who are willing to contribute to that house. We'll develop trading relationships with other people here in Spokane. I will know a lot of people in Spokane because I'm going to canvas the fuck out of it. That's the thing.
Hey, if you're getting into Washington, you really need to look into Home Washington. It's out on the Kitsap Peninsula. There's nothing out there but libertarians and anarchists. And if you're looking for free market trade, buddy, that's where you need to go.
Well,
I know it's a little bit out of the way of Spokane, and you need to cross the inlet and stuff from Seattle, but That's seriously the people you want to trade with.
See, I wouldn't mind trading with them cross distance, but ultimately my argument is, and this is my consistent point, is that people should build pockets of freedom wherever they are, so that there's a place like what you just talked about in every place that exists. Like, that's my goal. My goal is to have
Yeah.
a place like yours, a place like home, a place like all of these things, everywhere. Like, I never want to develop something like the Free State Project, which is an oxymoron, and tell people to move to a different place in the state, or tell people to move to a different state. Like, even though ironically that's what somebody is gonna do pretty much as soon as he can. He's gonna move here from fucking like an entirely different part of the country, because I've made a compelling enough case to move here. But like, while I'm not going to like bar people from doing that, the general goal of mine, I think people should build it wherever they are. Like, I think that's so. Like, there
Well,
should be
that's
some.
the thing, though. Like, um,
Go.
I was just gonna say that, like, that's the thing, though. Like, if we can start building each other up enough, eventually we'll need like forms of like communal trade and stuff like
Right.
that, right? So, like, at a certain point in the evolution of our communities, if we want to be truly self-sufficient, we're gonna have to be able to benefit other individual
Right.
communities out there through forms of trade.
Right. And
Right.
that's what I want. Like, I'm literally writing a book on how to best organize these things as cells, rather than as like some sort of like movement toward like individual hot spots in the country. Enough cells that eventually the anarchist infection overtakes the host. That's my goal.
Yeah.
I want anarchy to
So,
go
Well,
like,
there
viral.
could
like in the new
absolutely be a
Libertarian
situation
Manifesto?
though where like there could absolutely be a situation though where like, you know, in Exarchia, Greece, where anarchists just decide fuck it and take over a whole city.
Yes.
I don't know if y'all are familiar with the situation out there in Greece, but like anarchists have absolutely taken over a whole city, and if you're a cop going through there, you're liable to get lynched by a mob.
And
Like,
and
Hey Rose, we're gonna
and-
fix New York.
and yes,
Yes.
to answer the question you just asked, Rose, I'm writing 3 manifestos. So,
When can we expect those to be out?
the first one I want to be out by the end of the year. Somebody is grinding, I guess.
sorry,
Um,
it's over.
so the first one should be out by the end of the year, and like, my goal is to have all of them out by the end of 2025. I want practical manuals and guides and shit. If I can, like, my primary current goal is I want to hammer it all out and get it done. I want to start getting my music out there, and I also want to get several other sort of projects out there to start actually building a vibe of what I'm talking about rather than just saying it. And like, I want it to be concrete and something that's not. This isn't gonna be like liberalism length of book. Like, I'm not gonna, or fucking. This isn't gonna be like some giant fucking. This is gonna be something that somebody could like learn basics about anarchist history, basics about what caused certain things to fail, and basics about how to build the new society. So now I just need to avoid going broke between now and then. So obviously people can hire me for graphics and sub to the Patreon and shit. But like, the general thing, and this is the thing, like, this is a whole another conversation, but like, we honestly had this conversation already in the other Real Libertarians episode called To Party or Not to Party. And the general vibe, like, that I have is people should be more action oriented. People should be more like, I'm doing this regardless of what any party thinks now in my local community. I'm trying to build this up and prove that it works, show people that there's a stable model so that they don't think that it's just some, like, fucking gang of lawless rapists and murderers and, fucking, maybe
Well, that's basically what I've already been doing that for years. Like, there have been people out there that have seen the issues we live under, and they'll go off and they'll buy a plot of land and be like, all right, guys, come help me fucking do this. I want to deny the state as much as I possibly can and prove that very thing that you just said.
Yeah.
And like the past 5 years of my life have been traveling around to the people who have decided this thing and have actually taken steps to do it and helping them build up those communities.
Right.
So how
like-
hard to get land? And like, so when you first bought the land, like where did you live? Do you like?
I've never
in a
actually bought land.
Okay.
So the way that I personally did it for myself, when I did do it, because my situation went tits up, I bought a sailboat, and like
Okay.
that was my thing. Like I was a sailor, and like that was my little ANCOM fucking society, was on my boat and stuff. Unfortunately, I had a really bad storm take it down, and that dream went to the bottom of the ocean. But I'm working towards another sailboat. So like,
Okay.
yeah,
because I've looked at like I've been like homesteading groups. Like people buy a plot of land and then they basically live in a trailer while they build their own house. But yeah, it's
Also,
it's a matter of being willing to make the sacrifices necessary to actually do it. I think. I mean, it'd be definitely a downgrade from my current lifestyle, but.
Also, to address several things in chat, because I do like to do that, and because I think we're running up against the wall of people's time limits, and probably also energy/patience. The first thing I'd like to say is to Kieran O'Connor, who a while back responded, "Incoherent nonsense. I hope you go fuck yourself and have a terrible day."
Always
my
a
day's
ray
been
of
pretty great
sunshine.
personally.
Yeah.
Actually, really productive. So
Yeah. And so the next thing is Kant Lonathew, hello. I don't remember CLC wanting to oust ANCAPs since there were ANCAPs in connection with them. IRC at least might have been changes though.
It's that guy Joshua Eagles post about what he wants for the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
He even says that we shouldn't associate, he doesn't think the party should associate with anarchists because they're a statist party or some bullshit.
wow.
The post went viral. It was
Yeah.
shared to all the libertarian groups. So
Yeah, and I'm gonna write a thorough debunking of that as well. If people,
I meant to. I'm like, I was going to, and then I'm like, I could spend time doing this, and then I could spend time doing something actually productive. So I didn't.
well, I'll be writing it for Anarch Unity, and if anybody wants to support the effort, they can throw me some scratch for taking down Josh Casey. So fucking donation links are in the the description, whatever. Okay, so then we got, so generally the vibe I think should be that he doesn't represent everybody in that, and that also classical liberals in general are a bad idea anyway. Like the fact that they might have been affiliated with the ANCAPs to start with does not in fact mean, it's sort of like the fact that the Mises caucus doesn't give a fuck about Mises and doesn't like it when classical liberals quote him. Fucking, it's just like the classic liberal caucus, classic liberals in general are just liberals who don't want dad to call them liberals. It's just that. It's fucking sad.
They're not, but the classic liberal caucus, from what I've seen, they're not even classic liberals. They're like mainstream fucking Democrats, from what I can tell.
A lot of the time, Josh Eagle, he put out this thing where he sucked Biden's cock about fucking drone use, and I debunked that on Anarch Unity.
Yeah.
And so there, I'm gonna be
This
going.
is what we're up against. I mean, the Mises caucus has its issues, definitely. Like I criticize them a lot, but this is what we're up against.
Well, I'm up against them all, and clearly Mises Caucus is the first one of these caucuses to block me, so they can go fuck themselves. But
okay, that I'm pissed off about because that's bullshit.
Block me, kick me out of the room, but they can't shut me up. And people have been listening more since then, so
Yeah.
Streisand effect.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, right. And so generally, that's the case. And then the other half of it is, if the CLC doesn't want to work with anarchists, and if they do want to start just propagandizing Democrats, fuck them. Fuck them too. Like, the whole thing is, like, if I can't be an anarchist and work with you, if you don't support my ability to have 100% freedom, eat a spike. So that's my deal. And obviously by eat a spike, I mean spike proteins, because I would never suggest violence. So then we've got William, closer to the top. He says, voting, especially in New York, has always been rigged. It's called the Empire State for a reason. And also funny how he didn't need consent, real unlibertarian of the party. Yeah. He also says partyarchy instills apathy in regular people.
What? Wait, sorry. What was that? Instills apathy?
Partyarchy.
Well, okay. Yes. Yes, it does. And yes, voting is beyond rigged in New York. But, like, I got involved in the party mostly for networking purposes and for messaging and for education. I mean, that's really all we can do, I think.
Yeah, it's a way to get to more doors without being called a stalker and an ankle monitor.
Pretty much. Like, the entire, like, Libertarian Party, in my opinion, the main draw of it is that it gets a bunch of like-minded people in the same room at the same time. So it allows you to start a commune with, or like who you might want to know in the event of, the apocalypse or something.
I feel like putting out a get together on, say, like an app like Nextdoor, or like Meetup. I think that's the app that's called. Just like a coffee get together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we discuss these sorts of things with like random individuals in the community. The French Revolution was started by that very thing, by the way. Mm-hmm. Random individuals getting together in coffee shops talking about how fucked up the situation that they're in is. If we can like actually replicate that, like there's no need for parties. That can replace parties.
And you know who really liked that?
I personally don't feel that we should be utilizing state structures and government like games to establish what's better for humanity, because government has failed us. State structures have fucking failed us.
Hey,
we need to do better than that.
No, they haven't. State structures and governments haven't failed us. They're working exactly like they said they would. They're a bunch of violent thugs. The system's not broken. It's working as intended. True. Isn't that better?
Exactly what it's to.
Yeah. So, I generally agree. We did this 2-party or not to party episode as well. You're welcome to watch that. We might do part 2 at some point. But generally, the thing, like, the reason William was probably bringing that up was because we were talking about, like, the main thrust of this episode was, like, a bunch of corruption affiliated with the LP and shit like that. So, like, my particular, like, thing, I tried to remain pseudo-neutral in terms of which, like, because Sar Weasel wasn't better. The old guard, Gary Johnson, what's in Aleppo, fucking, the NAP goes over my head. Well, maybe you're short, motherfucker. Like, Jesus fuck, how is that hard to just not move? Agreed, move against. Don't tread on me. It's literally the NAP and a flag. If you don't understand that, maybe you got a Johnson in your brain. Fucking, anyway. I can go on. So, like, the point is that the Libertarian Party has been cucked by various organizations from the start. Konkin, like, pointed that out.
I've taken to calling black cops Uncle Ruckus.
Ah, that's good. But, like, the LP has been cucked from the start. Like, Konkin wrote about that New Libertarian Manifesto. And, like, the general vibe I want to give off is that while I understand certain reasonings for being involved, at least there needs to be an understanding of the problems. And I think we all do. I think we all do see that even though the old guard was bad, it's not like precisely this one is fucking awesome. Like, you know, it's like when Newsroom, like the guy in Newsroom says, you know, if liberals are so great, how come we lose? Wait, if liberals are so star spangled awesome, how come we lose so goddamn always? It's great. I love that show.
No, I mean, I knew when I was getting into it. I'm like, okay, this is a dumpster fire. Maybe if, you know, people like enough like-minded people join, it'll be slightly less of a dumpster fire. But, you know, I'm not really taking any of this seriously. I guess that's why I'm not as pissed about the whole Larry Sharp thing as some of the people who I know who have quit the party over it.
Meanwhile, I'm
Maybe
pissed
I'm just not
and laughing.
enough yet, but I mean, yeah, I can only laugh.
But are you ever a happy dude?
Was that?
Rarely.
I mean, like, I've never seen Jeremiah. Okay, you know, it's going to be a great day. The birds are out, the sun is shining, and, you know, nature just looks great today.
I prefer a cloudy day. I can run further.
I take the struggle between, like, voluntary and authoritarian society very seriously. Yeah. But that's just me.
Well,
I mean, I do, but what can I do about it other than, you know?
Well, wait. Let's
take the actions of voluntary society into your personal life and implement them as much as possible.
I do as much as I can. Unfortunately, like, I work in a field where, you know, being self-employed and employing the agorist strategy is, you know, not exactly easy. But like all my side gigs and stuff, yeah, as far as the IRS is concerned, those don't exist in Minecraft. I'm not talking about real life. We're just to be clear, we're just talking about, you know, Minecraft.
But there's a few things.
I personally,
I prefer GTA.
I've come from like working from the culinary industry, and I'm throwing my life towards like art. And like I just threw down like $1,000 on 3D printing, like pyrotechnic, wood crafting, and like necklace building. So like I'm about to throw myself into free market strategies.
Cool.
All of it is surrounded around like individual production.
And we also got Mike in the chat. He says he's looking forward to reading the book. He also says everywhere, yes, Jeremiah, and then network them. Yep, yeah, that's the goal. Sort of the metastasis of the anarchist cancer, taking the host of the U.S. and making it black. So
that's going to be taken out of context. The white nationalists are going to be really mad.
Yeah, but I hope so.
Oh, fuck them.
So he also says the LP broke the agreements with the anarchists. IDK that anarchists should want to be there. It's their choice, of course, though. Also, there's propaganda that puts us all in danger. That's shit publicity. Yeah, absolutely. He also says, I was with the party for mostly the same reason. It was just praxis. But if the platform is rotten, then one shouldn't stand on it, IMO. Next door is good.
Actually, I saw in the Discord because I look at my phone because I have ADD and I'm weird. But Mike is setting up in Matt Liberty Praxis 101 classes. So that's kind of good because, like...
Who is?
Mike, I can invite you if you have Discord. Do you have Discord?
Yeah.
Rose? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm on a bunch of servers.
So Bread Pirate, which is Mike, is setting up a Praxis 101 class as well. So you can go to that and learn what Praxis is. Because I don't
definitely send me an invite if he's okay with it.
Yeah, because I talk to my Mecox. I do Praxis.
It's communal. It's communal consensus. So it's not really up to an individual person as to whether or not you get in. The community has to feel comfortable with you, and there's a process involved with that. So I'm part of there. So
he also.
Well, I don't think there's anything in my background that's going to disqualify me, but I can't make any promises. But I'm not trying to or anything.
I'm just like trying to let you know how it goes.
Right, yeah, of course.
He also says next door is good. We used to do anarchist barbecues. Activists can use Eventbrite too. And he also says LP is kind of full of status. Kinda isn't the word. Like kinda.
It's an understatement.
Yeah, like the thing about it is that like, and this is the thing. This is the reason I brought up those 4 planks, and the reason one of them was just not knowing the principles, because a lot of these people, they want the aesthetic. Like, yo, there was this one fucking thing that really pissed me off, and that was that there was an agorist poster that was designed to promote agorism, and it was originally gray and white, and then somebody colorized it and made it yellow, and it's like, and then somebody colorized it and made it yellow, and this thing that was previously supporting gray markets is now yellow in support of ANCAPs, and it's like, you just took something somebody else had, or fuck you, Bill Orton.
That kind of fucking
Okay,
comes a dime a dozen,
that's
though, man.
actually
It happens
funny.
all the time.
It's funny, but yeah, that would annoy me too.
Or fuck you, Bill Orton,
It
for
just
taking
happens all the
markets
time,
not
though.
capitalism and then translating it from Marxian and turning it into
Does
markets
he-
not
does he have any of
corporatism.
his only original writing that's not just him like taking other
He's
people's
such
stuff
a
and writing
drab,
his own
condescending
commentary?
hack.
That has been my experience with him so far.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's the kind of people you're dealing with here. Where, like, they'll make something out of AI because they couldn't make art of their own, and they'll have that say their fucking political message, and they don't care that it looks like garbage. But their political message is often also garbage, so that doesn't matter. You know, like, they'll create something like some like version of something that has the anarchist A, but it has the anarchist A on something that's going to be statist. You know, fucking these people, a lot of them don't care about the original first principles. They don't research the first principles. They call themselves things like Mises Caucus without reading Mises. They call themselves things like classical liberals without reading the classical liberals. They call themselves things like libertarians while supporting opposition to other people's liberty to do things like move or be armed or be LGBT or be black or fuck you, shut the fuck up. That's what these. So if they're not willing to know the principles, much less stand on them, especially if they don't stand on them because they want their fucking numbers or their money or whatever, they can go fuck themselves. And that's the thing that a lot of libertarians have problems with, because the libertarian logo and mentality is so fucking vague that you can just say that you're a libertarian and nobody will and then, like, if somebody does, ooh, you're gatekeeping, who are you to decide who a real libertarian is? I only say that people who think my
I've
way
been
are.
finding that problem a lot with like I've been finding that problem a lot in like free market communities, especially because you get these motherfuckers that are sending people like Pinochet, and I don't know if you guys know anything about Pinochet, but that motherfucker
We
had
know
like
quite a
dogs
bit about
trained to fucking
that
rape
shit.
people and like maul them to death. Like, as a
The
part of
more
his
you
social
learn,
tactic.
the worse it gets.
And like I don't understand why like simpers for Pinochet are allowed in fucking free market communities, but
because
they
he
should not be
saved
there.
the market from the commies, so who cares at what
Yeah,
cost
bro.
it is?
So
Bro,
you know, in
I'm
an
get
actual
free
free
helicopter.
market situation, all
Free
forms of
helicopter
trade are
rides.
congruent with one another. Like
Yeah.
all look, like I said just now, in a free market situation, all forms of trade and all forms of economy are available to the individual. That means that anybody can do anything that they want as forms of economy. That includes gift fucking economies. That includes like capitalist economies, as long as they don't monopolize. You know, I just don't understand. Like,
Well,
I don't get it.
because the thing is, and this is the like a real key core problem here. libertarians are oftentimes co-opted by right-wingers who use it as an excuse to say that anybody to their left is anti-liberty, and in doing so restrict a huge amount of action because they've been
But
co-opted
that's
by
a
a whole
fucking
bunch
common.
because they've been co-opted by a whole bunch of right-wing bot media in the form of directly being funded by people like
That's
the
a
Koch
fucking
brothers
common
and
Nazi tactic.
yes. And so the whole thing
It's
here
a
is
common Nazi tactic,
yeah,
though, to dehumanize and like devalue another person's way of life and like benefit
but that's
like off of that dehumanization to like benefit their own structure.
but that's
That
the
shit's Nazi shit.
that's
That's
the that's
authoritarian
the other
practice.
half though, is that
Like,
so many of them are directly affiliated with Nazis and fascists in some kind of way, and removing those people would lose them their steam, would lose them their audience, would lose them their numbers. Funny number go down, and so they don't. And like this is so
So
okay.
wait.
Hmm?
Oh, you were saying like people who will pander to the, right wing circles, and then like, okay, yeah, there are, authoritarian right wingers within those circles, and then they don't want to, tone down or they don't want to stop pandering to them because they'll lose, the audience they had, and of
Yeah.
course the, financial support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so like for instance, Austin Peterson has a shirt, a merch line, an entire merch line with that retro wave graphic. You can tell that a lot of the people who use that are fascist, because they're saying we should go backward. We're too far progressive. These wokes, man. And then go like the Pinochet route. Like Pinochet was right is his merch line. He used to run for office. He used to be on the libertarian presidential thing, and he used to be like against the NAP. He literally told me personally once that the NAP is the ANCAP suicide pact. And so like that whole deal,
Yeah, I've heard that.
and
and
and so he specifically is greatly representative of so many fucking people in these circles. And when you get these people who come on board because really they just don't like communists and are looking for an excuse to blame them for everything, it doesn't matter what they do. Like, it doesn't matter what the fascists that they put in charge do.
I don't. I've seen that, but also I don't want to devalue like our side of the aisle's issues, right? There are a lot of fucking like Maoists and Leninists and Stalinists,
Yes.
and like scary figure followers like that on our side of the aisle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Are
yeah,
an
I deal with
issue.
I deal with them on
And
a daily basis.
they do absolutely fly ANCOM colors, and they pride themselves around as ANCOMs. I fucking tell you what, I'm a fucking ANCOM, okay? I don't get down with those motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
I follow people like Kropotkin and Nestor Makhno, and like look into the history of the Black Army and how Nestor Makhno came to being. It was directly like derivative of Stalin and like him fucking up the whole economy and like starving people. Like,
Do they actually pretend to be ANCOMs
Yeah.
though? Because in my experience, they're always proud of the fact that they're tankies, and that they take every opportunity they can to dunk on
Oh, look.
anarchists as being just dumb idealists who don't know better, who they
Well,
can use to
so
achieve
is
their
any-
ends in some cases.
Rose, there's
the ANCOM flag, and like there are certain ANCOM dog whistles that are used, right?
Okay,
The ANCOM flag specifically is black and red. Okay.
right.
Right off the bat, right there, there's a lot of tanky motherfuckers that wish to like establish like a proletariat elite, which is not what an ANCOM is, like seeks to do at all.
So you mean like that? You mean vanguardism?
Yeah, no, like ANCOMs are largely against vanguard.
Right. No, I know that
And
much.
yeah, and like there's certain dog whistles, like certain sayings, like I guess a figurative dog whistle for us would be like the cat, or like the black cat, or like the possum, or like a raccoon. Like those are all figurative dog whistles for us, but they've also been co-opted by these tanky motherfuckers that absolutely wish to utilize cops against people, and like they've utilized cops against us.
Wow.
It's
A
okay if the
a very
cops do it,
basic
as long as the
example is
people's
like
police.
a very
Sorry, was
basic
that Bryce?
example of this is like we'll get together for
Oh,
a unified like protest. For example, like youth prisons. It's pretty like far across the leftist spectrum. The youth prisons are not okay, right?
Mhm.
Well, these motherfuckers will march in the streets with you and scream ACAB in the streets for fucking 8 hours. And as soon as you take a break to go like off in the fucking alleyways to like do some drug or like fucking just like decompress in your own way that might not be legal, they're the first motherfuckers to call the cops on you for that.
Holy shit. Wow. I
Like-
thought, because I was under the impression they at least hated cops as they currently exist, but they also, well, basically they
No.
want their own version of cops, but holy.
Push that message. They push that message that they hate cops as much as they currently exist. But as soon as you're doing something that's like illegal currently that they disagree with, they'll not hesitate to use the cops against you.
Holy
And it
shit.
doesn't fucking matter if you're an ANCOM, if you're actually like a Vanguardian communist, if you rebel in a way that goes against the Vanguard's like agreed upon ways in their own council or whatever, they'll absolutely use the law against you and get you wound up in fucking jail. Like, yeah,
What'd you want to say, Bryce?
ANCOMs and authoritarian communists mix like oil and water, and that's my end point.
What were you gonna say though, Bryce?
so what I was talking about was like the meme that gets shared around where like the commies are okay with the police as long as they're named the people's police.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something I wanted to say like quite a while ago. It's like, yeah, the status will go out of their fucking way on both sides. Like this is not exclusively an ANCAP issue. They will go out of their way to try and infiltrate anarchist movements in an attempt to either water down them or make them illegitimate, whatever they can to just completely fuck it over, which is why it annoys me so much when lib right and lib left sit there and fucking argue with each other and talk about how they would never work with each other. It's like, no, motherfuckers, if we are going to do it, like, and lib right very much would live in a symbiotic relationship. They'd have to, otherwise they'd both cease to exist. So like, no, you absolutely do have to fucking work with each other.
Uh-huh.
I personally
We want
don't
the same
understand
things.
why.
Okay, we can sit around arguing all day over whether, we think wage labor is, inherently exploitative or whether it's only exploitative because of the system as it currently exists. But none of that actually matters. All that really matters is how, society would actually function in a stateless society. I think, you'd have varying, okay, areas to some extent. I think, you'd have some communities that operate, on more of a gift economy where, the means of production are collectively owned. You'd have some that are more market based. But at the same time, I think we do, for the most part, want all the same things. So yeah, it's frustrating. I can't stand sectarianism and anarchism because, you get the stupid anarchist infighting, and then you get, on the one side, you get ANCOMs dumb enough to align their in-state socialists. Then, on the lib-right side, you get people aligning themselves with fucking, right-wing authoritarian groups.
Well, on my side of the aisle, there's a certain point where, self-sufficiency and self-production just simply isn't enough, right? And from there, if you want to, truly be an anarchist and, dedicate yourself to that path, you're going to have to rely on the free market. You can be 3D printing all of the things that you want from that and molding all the metals and building everything here on the commune as much as you right? Computer chips or a doctor that's well professed in his like medical knowledge. If a commune member gets sick, or like, just finer like technologies and finer like medical applications, there's a certain point where like you're gonna have to fucking rely on the free market. And there's really nothing wrong with that because it's all voluntary exchange. And in a true free market, value is subjective. So you're not forced under a central currency. Like you can exchange whatever, the beneficiary needs, and that can take form in many different things. It can look like localized fiat. It can look like cryptocurrency. It can look like farm veggies. It can look like physical goods that you currently have for barter. Like it can look like many things. And I think that people are very restrictive to the idea of what a free market is.
Mhm.
And
people
I don't know,
engage
I
in
think that people should be
conflationism.
more minded.
Yeah. So, okay.
What were you saying?
Go for it. Were you going to say something, Rose?
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, we're edging up on 2.5 hours. Let me just then sort of go round table. Like we'll start with Bryce because he hasn't said much in this stream, and I want to make sure that he can speak his piece. Give me 3 or 4 minutes of sort of uninterrupted your take on the Libertarian Party, corruption versus not corruption, what it's doing right, what it's not, etc.
Okay, well, so yes, unfortunately, I do think the Libertarian Party has still very much got corruption with it. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest it, especially on the coastal, more state-affiliated parties and the National Party. What I think it's done right is it does seem to be trying to, at least at the national level, promote more, and even in my state affiliate party, shout out to LPWI, it does seem to be promoting more, not perfect or even ideal principled libertarians, but it does seem to be somewhat going away from the old guard where it's like, oh, we're just gonna put up whoever is even semi-libertarian that will get us votes. They do seem to be trying to implement the more of like, no, motherfucker, we're going to put up the most principled guy we can that actually wants to run, and we'll go from there. As far as shit that they've done wrong, yeah, absolutely. The whole like hyper focus on the anti-woke shit is dumb as fuck.
Mhm.
That plank that Rose was talking about, that she'd message that they were trying to alter, that was fucking stupid. And really, like, a very, very large chunk of the leadership that is now currently running the LNC has become eerily similar to what they were trying to get rid of, and that's incredibly disappointing, to say the least. That's really all I have to say on that, though.
All right. For variety, because Lizard came in a little later, your take on the LP. If you're here.
Looks like he stepped out.
All right, that's fine. You, Rose?
I mean, I feel like I gave my take, so
What? Yeah, but like
I don't
just
know
sort
what
of a
else I have
wrap
to
up
say that I
statement.
haven't already ranted about. But I mean, all in all, I have not given up hope on it. I still think it can be used as a platform for messaging and education. I'm glad that most of the old guard is gone. However, I mean, yeah, I do have my criticisms of the current leadership, like mostly like Bryce already said, you know, the fixation on culture war bullshit when, you know, that's not what they were originally supposed to be focused on. I think, you know, part of it has to do with recruitment. In order to oust the old guard, they needed numbers. And then part of it is what I like to refer to as displaced contrarianism. Like, I think there are a lot of people who, you know, they see, for example, like LGBT stuff being pushed on, you know, by the mainstream media, and they think it's being pushed by the establishment. So the knee-jerk response is to push back against it. I mean, they're not necessarily wrong, but they're wrong about like they're right, but they're wrong about why they're right. Like, it's being pushed as a deliberate wedge issue, but it's not being pushed by the LGBT community. It's being pushed by the establishment to create, you know, divisive, you know, social issues. So that's one of my biggest criticisms of the current leadership, buying into the culture war bullshit. Other than that, yeah, I mean, and then obviously there's still issues with, you know, money coming in from unsavory sources, such as, you know, what we're seeing with the RFK campaign, and, you know, some of the candidates that probably still have, you know, Koch brothers backing, or, you know, other special interest groups who want to push, you know, a watered down libertarian message that will serve them without, you know, actually threatening the status quo.
You had something, Lizard?
That
About the Lizard?
No, I don't really have anything. As far as my perspective on the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, because that's what this stream was initially about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
No,
Yeah,
hey. Yo, this channel is all about like long form discussion. Sometimes things get sidetracked, and that gives great hooks for like more content going down. Like I what I want to do is have more conversations about more practical things, so we can have follow-ups on this and have more practical discussions, not only with you, but like also with other people who are interested in that subject. I would not mind that at all. So the fact that we had this brief like sort of site, and honestly, like, if we can't briefly talk about anarchy, like, then there's no point to saying that anarchists should be the alternative to the mainstream libertarians. Like, if we can't have a civil discussion about that, yeah, so it's fine.
I mean, it's kind of it's an anarchist
So, like,
channel, so
Yeah.
yeah, it should all tie back to it.
Yeah,
As far as the Libertarian Party goes, I think the party is as like on a nationalist level is kind of a sinking ship. I think that it's a money pit that people throw false hopes into, and they could definitely be like investing themselves in a lot better ways on a local level. Local libertarians, however, do some pretty good efforts. You know, they like localized groups and stuff definitely do, you know, like outreach to like impoverished communities and minorities and stuff. And
Oh, right,
to
yeah.
say otherwise would be wrong.
No, I know people personally
like,
who
I
ran for
definitely
local office and got elected. So yeah, I think that is the strategy. You know, run for local office and then just, you know, like block, you know, particularly bad laws from being put in place, or nullify existing laws. Like that is kind of the I mean that is, you know, kind of the strategy of the Mises Caucus, which is why I'm, you know, still with them. Because
So-
the issue for
strategy.
me is that
Yeah,
like
so-
it's not a voluntary society that we have to contend with, right?
Well,
And like in a voluntary situation, anarchists would be able to opt out and form their own committees and like their own forms of structure, and that is what I want in the end. I don't necessarily disagree with certain specific localized libertarian values, because unfortunately they're being infiltrated by fascists.
Yep.
correct.
But
To give you the
there are certain
Well-
libertarian parties that are localized that I can get behind.
yeah. So and just before you respond, Kareem, three things actually, I guess. Because I'll be speaking my piece after this, but like I wanted to give everybody their chance to sort of speak their piece. You weren't in the room when it started, but basically, so Like the first thing is that like the Mises idea seemed pretty cool to begin with. I even posted some things originally in support of some of what they were doing, and we were
Mm-hmm.
mutuals on Twitter for a long time. But it's sort of strayed. Jacob Daniel Winograd admits this, and he was involved in the starting of the caucus, and he's like admitting that
Uh-huh.
there's significant problems with the way it's being fucking handled now, and he was there at the start. And so like there's that as well, and then there's also the second thing of um, like if they want better messaging, they need to have that messaging be like cohesive to libertarian and specifically American things, like and they need to be very clear, um like to not have the social media saying things that wouldn't jibe with the candidates. If the social media is taking an official position on things which are disagreed with, that's going to send a bad message to everyone involved. And then the third thing, before we get too much into the wrap up, there's going to be another stream on Essential Libertarians tomorrow. We were going to do it after this one, but this one is nearly 3 hours long, and that's going to be fucked in the exact wrong hole. So, we will figure that out tomorrow. By the way, yeah, for all of those of you who are new to this channel, maybe watching in Mike's server, this is the kind of shit you'll see on this channel. Is just maybe some good discussions and also unhinged shit from an unmedicated motherfucker. So
Hey.
there's that, and
I
then
feel like
there's
that could apply to any of us, though. Okay.
right, yeah. And then the other thing is, before you get started, the reason I was going to say all that is to say, take like 3 maybe 5 minutes to really hammer down your views on the Libertarian Party, because we're like starting to wrap up. Because like I wanted to make sure everybody had their chance to really speak their piece. You, Kareem, you're the last one before me, anyway.
Okay. So, speaking directly from Michael Heiss, he told me, like, I asked you, about federal positions. He's like, we can do that and we can do state positions, but what's easier, to go to the feds and try and nullify stuff there, or to go to local government and nullify the feds? And I said, well, local government and nullify the feds. And that's the idea behind that. And those are direct conversations, which that's a good idea. Also, in regards to what the party can do, I think we need, better messaging, better leadership, and then we can get back on track. That's what I'd like to see. I'd also like to see this irrational fear of, I guess, if you want to call it decentralized communes, stop being mixed in with the Marxist variant, and also being saying, hey, if somebody's advocating for freedom or less government or anything like that, or if they are an anarchist, we need to work with them. Harry even threw something real crazy. He's like, Kareem, you'd work with anybody who's an anarchist, even if they said, like, because I said I like primitivists, and he said, like, well, if someone was gonna, he gave me a real ridiculous example, like cut off their kneecaps or something, or said it. I said, well, you know what, that's ridiculous, but I'll give you an answer. If those people who are doing whatever ridiculous are anarchists, I'll work with them. I'd rather work with like, people know I'm not a fan of veganism. I'm actually more lean carnivore more. And I did that because I was trying to eat more plants, and then my stomach. Yeah, so, but regardless, I'd rather work with a vegan anarchist than someone who's a hardcore statist but is carnivore, even if that reflects my values. And the thing is, because I know if somebody's an anarchist, they'll leave me alone. The statist won't. The statist will eventually say, hey, well, can't we just, get a little bit of government here, and there? And it turns into a nightmare. So that's what I think we need to do. This culture war stuff does not help, advocating for people who are, less than ideal, like RFK, stuff like that, saying like, oh, well, I'd like to see Vivek Ramaswamy and RFK and all this stuff, and then simping for Malay is not good. We need to stick to first principles. Then, in my opinion, we will win. And we also need to, here's another problem too that I did think of, but this isn't a recent problem. This is just a problem. Josh Halofka made me aware of this. Even though Josh Halofka, me and him have disagreements. I think he likes Mike Dermott. I don't. But he's, I think, the chair of the Libertarian Party, ASIS Florida. You might know him, Rose, Josh Halofka. And he said libertarians get to, not that theory isn't important. We can have tests and stuff. But libertarians get too pushed with theory. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like, if you call someone on a recruitment call and you're like, who's your favorite Austrian economist? That might be cool for someone in the Libertarian Party, specifically if you're like an ANCAP or a minarchist, but that's not going to, the average person just doesn't want a high grocery bill. They don't care that, you can quote Rothbard. I found that out real quick. So, and sometimes we're always quoting theory. That's all we're doing. Like, there's libertarians who just quote theory, and they want to be real dogmatic. And I'm like, instead of just quoting theory all day, guys, get some emotion into it. I'll tell you this, your economics are good. But the problem is the ANCOMs have you beat in taking direct action and emotionally motivating people. I can't say, one reason I read ANCOM theory is because Rothbard and Mises and Menger are great thinkers, but they're dry. You read something like Errico Malatesta, you're like, man, the anarchist spirit is, one that, seeks the good of all, justice for all, which is not just among self-defined anarchists, but for all people who have an open mind. That will get people, or not if we get to anarchism today, but if we walk. So if we can adopt some of the wisdom from the ANCOMs and the agorists, which is to motivate people emotionally, not just theoretically on economics, even though we are founded in Austrian economics, we can put that aside and use that as a building block later. But you first have to emotionally motivate people. I'm taking classes in remote sales. If you can't find people's pain point and emotionally motivate them, it does not matter if you have read Anatomy of the State 5 times, which I have. It's not going to work. So that's my thing.
All right. So, and just to correct, Mike is streaming this in their server. I realized I fucked that up. So there we go. Need to correct the record whenever so the general gist, I think I have. Be engaged, because what I saw, and I've seen this directly on so many of these occasions, is that libertarian politicians oftentimes aren't that very much an alternative. They seem like hollowed out husks in politician suits, just like everybody else involved here, and maybe don't do that. Maybe if you're going to say that you're a fucking a libertarian difference, you're going to say that you're somehow better, be better. And then additionally, fucking like, while you're engaged, be engaged with principle. Like, talk to people, actually be willing to say, or have people say on your behalf, why they should support you, instead of just like being hands off, or like Rick the regime and his I'm going to untag myself from your fucking post because I don't want to talk to people. Being insular is not how you get votes or support or jack fucking shit. And the only reason he keeps on getting support at all is because a bunch of people are on his mailing list who did not ask to be. I'm one of them. And so
Well, progressive action comes from those that start it themselves and spread the ideas to their community around them.
Yeah. And like
Does your hat light?
And if like you got like the whole deal of I'm going to try to be different, you've got to prove you're different by not pandering to the same fucking issues. So like if you're a libertarian, don't be like Josh Eagle or like fucking any of these people who are like cucking to the Dems. Or any of these people who are like cucking to the Dems, but definitely also don't be like a MAGA or a Vivek or an RFK or otherwise just I'm making anti-woke my entire personality. And all of that shit combined with like, fucking like don't pretend the left is exclusively anti-liberty. Don't pretend that a word which started its political origins by being on the left is somehow only applicable to right-wingers. That's dumb and evil. And when you do this, vet people for events and activities. Actually give enough of a shit to know who's going to be involved with you, and only support that which you know wouldn't have a problem with people bringing up. Reach across aisles. Try to work with people. Try to get people on board who like you might not normally talk to. Actually talk to people before judging them instead of buying some smear campaign. You know, for instance, one about somebody a little bit blacklisted in some libertarian circles because he rocked the wrong boats. Um, there's a lot of problems here that are like structural, and funding oriented, and like old guard partisan hackery, and just so many problems that are directly resultant of people who do not want the Libertarian Party to be libertarian. They want it to be more Republican or more Democrat. And then whenever anybody has anything to say about that, they'll just come begging on their hands and knees for the Republicans and Democrats that they wanted involved to please come back. We promise we'll change the platform, we'll change the messaging, we'll become less radical in XYZ ways, we'll become more mainstream, we'll become more tolerable.
I think it's important to notice that the people that are new to philosophy and stuff, though, that might be like caught in the crossfire, so to speak, and
Sure.
you know, sucked into statist ways, because there's absolutely like a statist infiltration going on.
Sure.
You know, and like people that are new to this, they need guidance.
Right.
You know,
but we should guide them instead
Yeah, I
of
think
just
I'm
saying that we
usually
should
pretty
like
good at identifying.
go.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, I think I can usually sort of identify the ones who are just new and, you know, not quite there yet. But yeah, then there's also an issue. Like, I mean, I'll tolerate, you know, a conservative if they appear to be moving in the libertarian direction as opposed to moving away from the libertarian. Though I actually do feel like I haven't, maybe it's just because I came from the left, I have an easier time with people who also came from the left. I feel like I don't really know how to reach out to right-wingers, but
Well,
that's just a me problem.
no, it's not a you problem. I came from the left too. I was a punk rocker, then I went left, then I went right.
Yep.
I'm somewhere in the middle. But here's the thing: there's different ways to do it. A, you can actually show them that Rothbard had a literal piece called the Left Libertarian when he started. It's not like Rothbard. You know, Rothbard went all over the place too, kind of like I did. But you know, he had a pretty,
Me too.
he had a pretty based thing. The Left Libertarian Case for Confiscation, which is a pretty base thing that he wrote. Also, here's another thing that you can get. A lot of right-wingers talk about military, even right libertarians and non-anarchists. I think it's worth noting the Viet Cong is a statist institution. The Taliban's a statist institution. Those are not great examples to say like, hey, these beat an imperial power, even though they did. I think what I would go now is like, hey, you're a right winger, right? You want to be able to defend yourself, all this stuff. I think the most impressive example, the CNTFE, that the CTFN army in the Spanish Civil War, but even more so, Nestor Makhno was able to fight two armies, very well-equipped armies for a very long time. That, to me, Nestor Makhno should be a right wing, in my opinion, symbol more than a left wing, because you're going to say, hey, I want a decentralized militia, which is what the founders wanted. And people say, well, that can't work. A decentralized militia that was, even though it was structured federally, was able to fight off, from my understanding, the Tsar's army and also the Red Army as well for a very long time.
yeah, there's the white and the Red Army. But honestly, as an ANCOM, I personally like to stray away from I don't know, idealization, honestly, because like the Black Army was birthed out of necessity. I it had a lot to do with like Stalin taking over power of the cities in Russia during the time of the Russian Civil War, and in his power grab, he was actually starving people, that were specifically of the lower class. And the lower class, seeing this, they decided to take to the hillsides of Ukraine to go out and farm for themselves, so that they could avoid starvation in the cities. And what Stalin did was he saw people doing this and making, like, a reasonable means of survival for themselves, basically, while he was starving in the city. And so what he did was he sent out roving, like, death squads, like basically gangs that just roamed the Ukrainian hillside to rob people of what little food they had. And eventually people had enough of it because they were already dying, and they formed together an army and started fighting against the Red Army, which was the Stalinist army. And that was later known as the Black Army, which was Nestor Makhno's, like, free territory of Ukraine and the Black Army and all that. But yeah, it was genuinely birthed out of necessity, through authoritarian oppression and survival. And there was no, like, somebody taking the podium and being like, hoorah, I'm for this thing. Like, it was absolutely birthed out of, like, starvation and struggle. And, like, it's not a pretty story,
And in that spirit, because we're edging up on 3 hours, what I'll say is, don't corner us. You won't like it when we respond. And if you feel cornered, try to distill that. Try to explain to other people how they're cornering us. Try to explain to other people how they're, destroying our freedom and our peace. And whether you try to achieve change through politics or anti-politics, I prefer the latter. Like, at least understand the struggle well enough that you can lock arms with your fellow brothers and sisters and gender neutrals, like, trying to figure out how to move forward and actually get liberty for once, because, like, it hasn't been working so far, and it'd be great to see it work for once.
Explain how you're cornered too.
Yeah.
Like, to people.
Yeah,
like, just go out there and tell them people. Like, it'll draw people to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying to idolize Nestor Makhno either. I'm not saying to idolize anybody. I am saying to use things as a functional example. And what's interesting to me is there's a very big argument that people make, especially on the right. With the left, to me, it's more like, oh, well, there won't be social services to help. Like, that's what my dad would say, kind of Democrat. Like, oh, I'm like, no, mutual aid, Dad. He's like, okay. But on the right, it's like, well, I like anarchy, but you just can't have an anarchist army. And I'm like, bro, let me show you something that went down in Ukraine and Russia with this guy named Nestor. I'm not saying Nestor is like, wow, I don't put him as my top anarchist thinker, but it's impressive to say, hey, I fought 2 well-trained armies out of necessity and kicked butt for a while. That is cool.
And in that spirit, we can talk about that and more tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about the Russia situation anyway on the Essential Libertarians channel. And with that being said, does anybody have anything they want to plug before we book?
Well, shit, I should have thought about this one.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to plug.
All right, well then I will simply say, if you are an enemy of freedom, you are an enemy of myself and any people who matter. And I hope you lose everything, and I will do what I can to make that happen and work with anyone who will join me. This has been Real Libertarians. Jeremiah Talks. Like, share, subscribe. Fuck some money into the Patreon or whatever if you like what you heard. And yeah, smash the fucking state. Cool.